Chapter 119 I'm Feng Wu as in Soaring Phoenix. Chapter 119. I'm Feng Wu as in Soaring Phoenix. Weren't those the white porcelain bottles she threw at Yuminji when she set him up? She was the reason that his feet bled and his eyes turned red and swollen. And what did he just call those bottles? A token of love? Was Yuminji out of his mind? Aren't those the most common white porcelain bottles which you can find everywhere? Feng Wu's voice was so tiny that she could barely hear it herself. She really didn't know how to describe her feelings at the moment. She was aware of Yuminji's goofiness, but she never realized that he could be this silly. Yuminji threw a dirty look at Feng Wu, then announced proudly, "How can you call them common? Are you blind? These are definitely a token of love. They say that good things always come in pairs. That's why she gave me two." Just keep lying to yourself, Yuminji, Feng Wu thought in resignation. The look Feng Wu gave Yuminji now was very hard to describe. It was a mix of embarrassment, bewilderment and confusion. But more than anything, she pitied him for his scant intelligence. Had she somehow damaged Yuminji's head back there in Frozen Forest? Did he even realize what he was saying? There was nothing attractive about the disguise she had worn in Frozen Forest. Plus, she had set him up, poisoned him, and nearly drove him to a mental breakdown. Yet the teenager had just told her. He had just called Feng Xiaowu pretty, kind and a goddess? And those bottles had become a token of love? Holy shit. Blue veins popped on Feng Wu's forehead. The world or Yuminji, one of them had to have gone insane. Seeing that Feng Wu was trembling, Yuminji looked at her curiously and asked in bewilderment, "Why are you shaking? Are you cold?" "Hehehe, I am. It's freezing." Cold sweat covered her body and Feng Wu felt so awkward. With no idea that the irresistibly pretty girl in front of him was the ugly girl he was looking for, Yuminji went on talking. Given how proud he was, he couldn't stop bragging. "My girl is pretty, gentle and kind. She's nothing like you, all sharp-tongued and obnoxious. So stop wasting your time. I'm never going to fall in love with you." Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. She might have actually been fooled by Yuminji, had it not been for the fact that she was the girl in question. If Yuminji found out the truth about Feng Xiaowu later, would he kill her when he remembered what he said today? Somehow, she was seriously considering the possibility of being killed. Feng Wu looked up at the sky in silence. "So can I go now?" Feng Wu asked. She couldn't fight back her laughter much longer, and she feared that she might crack up at any moment. It was impossible to stop herself from giggling over what Yuminji had been saying about her. Glaring at Feng Wu, Yuminji was going to let her leave, but after some thought, he still asked, "Hey, sharp-tongued girl, what's your name? Why do you want that now?" Feng Wu asked impatiently. "Are you going to get back at me later? I just want to know the name of the girl with a bigger ego than me." Yuminji rolled his eyes. Since she wasn't wearing a disguise, Feng Wu found it unnecessary to hold back that piece of information. Plus, she couldn't bring herself to lie to the poor boy anymore. She answered without hesitation, "I'm Feng Wu as in Soaring Phoenix." Chapter 120. Just leave me alone. Chapter 120. Just leave me alone. Yuminji's eyes widened. Feng Wu? As in that useless Feng Wu of the Feng family in northern border city? The corner of Feng Wu's mouth twitched a little, but she still nodded. As in the useless Feng Wu, the former fiancé of Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu clenched her fists and nodded again. As in the fifth daughter of the Feng family, who was replaced by Zhou Qingyuan. Blue veins popped on Feng Wu's forehead. "Ha ha ha. So you're Feng Wu, the famous good-for-nothing." Feng Wu took a deep breath. Why had she even bothered to sympathize with Yuminji at all? She must have lost her mind. Turning away from Yuminji, Feng Wu stormed off. "Hey, wait!" Yuminji followed her in a hurry. Feng Wu went on walking angrily. Yuminji walked by her side and would cast a glance at her every now and then. It seemed that the pretty girl was really... "Hey!" Yuminji poked Feng Wu in the arm. Feng Wu ignored him. "Are you angry? Like really angry?" Yuminji asked tentatively. Feng Wu kept on walking without any intention of slowing down. Of course she couldn't stop. The consequences would be unimaginable if Feng Sun caught her. Walking side by side with Feng Wu and seeing the stern look on her face, Yuminji mumbled, "Hey, you're so narrow-minded. No wonder June Linyuan broke off the engagement. My goddess is really magnanimous. She'd never behave the way you're behaving now. Feng Wu smirked. Your goddess? What's your goddess called? That successfully silenced Yuminji. He said He was going to call her Ugly Girl. But after all the nice things he had said about her, Ugly Girl didn't feel like the right nickname. Hence, he replied. Her surname is Feng and she's the 5th child in her family. So she goes by the name Miss 5. Unlike you, she'd never give her maiden name to some random guy she meets on the street. Feng Wu took a deep breath and fought back her vexation. However, maybe that deep breath had triggered something, for Feng Wu felt the sensation of flatulence in her lower abdomen. Damn it! She was going to release gas again. Involuntarily, she looked up at Yuminji. Yuminji was bewildered. What? What did I do now? Biting her lower lip, Feng Wu looked conflicted. Was it possible that Yuminji wouldn't recognize the smell of immortal spiritual fruit if she released the gas here? She shook her head inwardly. That was very unlikely. So what should she do now? Why are you holding your belly? Do you have a stomachache? Yuminji looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Feng Wu didn't know what to tell him. Why are you still following me? Go find your goddess. Feng Wu glowered at him. I'm going home now. Get lost. That came out of nowhere, and Yuminji was offended. He snorted. Do you think I want to follow you around? If you didn't happen to have a similar aura and body shape as my goddess, I wouldn't look at you even if you begged me to. After that, Yuminji turned and stormed off in the opposite direction. Feng Wu's eyes widened. That was easier than she had thought, and after she had racked her brain for a way to send him away. Seeing that Yuminji had left, Feng Wu took a deep breath and rushed into an alley nearby. Just when she was finally going to let loose, she looked up and saw Yuminji right in front of her. That was close. Chapter 121. Why was everyone in her way? Chapter 121. Why was everyone in her way? Feng Wu's eyes popped out. Gritting her teeth and clenching her fists, she bellowed, I thought you left. Why are you still here? She was that close to exposing herself. Yuminji's chiseled face was very grim as he stared at Feng Wu with a chilly look in his eyes and smirked. I'm not taking orders from you. Who are you to tell me what to do? Feng Wu was speechless. Why did she have to run into such a goofball? She really needed to go. Now. I'm begging you, okay? Master, you please stop following me, will you? No, please stop letting me follow you, alright? Feng Wu felt like crying. She walked out of the alley and was going to head in the opposite direction. However, she had barely taken one step when Yuminji blocked her way again. Anger and resentment was written all over his impeccable face. His eyes were as hard as cold steel, but he looked equally aggrieved. Staring at Feng Wu, he asked in a quiet voice, Do you want to get away from me that badly? Feng Wu forced a smile. It's not that I want to, but I should. Your goddess may get the wrong idea if she sees us together. You don't want that, do you? Didn't you say that she's here in Northern Border City as well? Do you want to give her the wrong impression? Only then did Yuminji realize that he had jumped into the pit. He had dug himself. For some unknown reason, he just wanted to stay with Feng Wu, even if it was just to walk with her. However, he couldn't stop thinking about that ugly girl at the same time. It was so confusing. Feng Wu's face had turned blue and her eyes were bloodshot red from her desperate effort to control her bowels. She said hastily, You know what? I think I saw young Lord Feng and his people chasing someone on my way here. They kept mentioning this Feng Xiaowu and ugly girl, and I think I heard frozen forest and immortal spiritual fruit too. Do you think they're after your goddess? What? They found Feng Xiaowu. Where? That successfully distracted Yuminji. Feng Wu gave him the wrong direction. Follow this street all the way down and you'll see young Lord Feng. Yuminji disappeared into the distance as soon as Feng Wu finished her sentence. Finally, Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. Now was the time. But it definitely wasn't her lucky day today. Yuminji had only just gone off when a taunting voice spoke behind her. Feng Wu, you piece of shit. Instead of staying at home, you're out here flirting with other men. Shame on you. It was Feng Lu, Feng Wu's cousin. Next to her stood Fairy Muyao. They saw Feng Wu talking to a pretty teenager just then, but because Yuminji had his back to them, they hadn't made out his face. But what they saw was enough to frame Feng Wu. Feng Wu was going to fart when she turned around and saw the duo. Her face darkened. She didn't have time for these two, so she turned to leave right away. Both Feng Lu and Fairy Muyao found this a great opportunity. They had finally caught Feng Wu alone, and they weren't going to let her leave just like that. They immediately blocked Feng Wu's way on both ends. With Feng Lu in front of her, Fairy Muyao behind her, the city wall on the left and the moat on her right, Feng Wu was cornered. Chapter 122 Falling. Chapter 122 Falling. Crossing her arms, Feng Lu looked down her nose at Feng Wu, her attitude extremely arrogant. Fairy Muyao was also sneering at Feng Wu. She seethed with anger as she scanned Feng Wu's charming posture and slim figure, and recalled all the praises Feng Sun had sung of Feng Wu. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" Feng Lu smirked. "We saw everything. Don't you feel ashamed of yourself? A woman of such loose morals doesn't deserve a face like that." That reminded Fairy Muyao. Young Lord Feng wouldn't stop talking about how beautiful Feng Wu was, so much so that the crown prince had begun to notice her. June Linyuan would never marry her with someone as beautiful as Feng Wu around. Realizing that, Fairy Muyao flipped her hand to reveal a sharp dagger. Feng Lu frowned. "You're going to kill her? Isn't that a little too much?" Fairy Muyao snorted. "Kill her? She's not worth that much trouble. But I do think that her face is an eyesore." And she wanted to destroy it. Darting Feng Lu a look, Fairy Muyao said, "She won't be flirting with men again if she doesn't have that face. And she certainly won't ruin the reputation of your clan anymore, will she? So you're only doing it for the greater good. Am I right?" Fairy Muyao had just given Feng Lu the most flagrant excuse. Because Feng Wu had always been the model child all parents fawned over, Feng Lu had hated this cousin of hers growing up. Hence, that excuse successfully persuaded her right away. However, she recalled what Feng Iran had taught her earlier, that she shouldn't do it herself, but leave the dirty job to others. Hence Feng Lu said, "But she's my sister after all. I can't bring myself to do it." Fairy Muyao was as foolish as always. She snorted and said, "You don't have to. Just promise me you won't tell another soul." After that, Fairy Muyao pressed the dagger to Feng Wu's neck and leaned closer, whispering into the latter's ear. "Feng Wu, your life or your face, pick one." "What if I want both?" Feng Wu gave Fairy Muyao a half-smile, the look in her eyes brooding. She wasn't scared at all. Fairy Muyao felt provoked. Grinding her teeth, Fairy Muyao glared at Feng Wu. "Feng Wu, do you know what I hate the most about you?" "Enlighten me," Feng Wu said calmly. "It's this confidence you have, as if nothing can get to you. It makes me want to rip your face off and gouge your eyes out." As she said that, Fairy Muyao raised the dagger and slashed down at Feng Wu's fair, smooth cheek. Her face was twisted with her malicious grin. Finally, she could destroy the face that she was so jealous of. She wasn't the only one enjoying this. Feng Lu was sneering as well. "Feng Wu, die." What happened next was quicker than words could describe. No one saw it coming, but all of a sudden Feng Wu leapt to the side. She jumped toward the deep moat. Before Feng Wu fell in, she caught Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu each by the hand and dragged both of them into the moat with her. Everything happened so fast. Chapter 123 Let Go of Me. Chapter 123. Let go of me. Ah! Feng Wu let out a scream before she hit the water. Feng Lu couldn't swim at all. So she panicked after she fell in and kept flailing her arms around. Fairy Muyao was a little better and was able to stay afloat. However, she happened to fall in right next to Feng Lu, and it was her unlucky day. Instead of grabbing onto Feng Wu, Feng Lu grabbed hold of Fairy Muyao. A drowning person would never let go of their life-saving straw. Hence, Feng Lu wouldn't let go of Fairy Muyao no matter what. Fairy Muyao tried her best to pry Feng Lu's fingers open. "Let go of me. Now." However, Feng Lu feared that she would sink if she did. Instead of loosening her grip, she held on even tighter to Fairy Muyao and wrapped herself tightly around Fairy Muyao like an octopus. And that wasn't all she did. Feng Lu was choking Fairy Muyao with all her efforts. Infuriated, Fairy Muyao almost had a stroke. She tried her best to throw Feng Lu off. But in such a life-threatening situation, Feng Lu was so frighteningly strong that Fairy Muyao couldn't shake her off at all. She could hardly breathe. Cough, cough. Let go of me. Let go. I'll get out first. And I'll pull you up. Fairy Muyao's tongue was out and her eyes were rolling back in her head. If she didn't do something now, she would be strangled by Feng Lu. However, all that Feng Lu could focus on now was the water rushing into her mouth and nostrils. Panic-stricken, she wouldn't loosen her grip no matter what Fairy Muyao said. Fairy Muyao was so frustrated. How could she have agreed to work with such a stupid person? It wasn't all that difficult for Fairy Muyao to jump out of the moat and bring another person with her. But the sad thing was that Feng Lu was on equal footing with her in terms of their capabilities. When Fairy Muyao wanted to jump up, Feng Lu cancelled out all her efforts by pulling her down. Hence she was going nowhere. Not only was Fairy Muyao being choked, her stomach was filling with water. She would die if she didn't do something. Cherishing her life more than anything else, Fairy Muyao forgot all about her partnership with Feng Lu. Let go of me. Let go. Fairy Muyao punched Feng Lu in the head with her fist. Was Feng Lu's reaction a mere result of her panic? Not really. Feng Wu never gave up on revenge. When they were falling into the moat, Feng Wu had stuck a silver needle into one of Feng Lu's acupoints to magnify her sense of fear. Since Feng Lu was afraid of water in the first place, one thing led to another, and Feng Wu had achieved her goal. As soon as they fell in, Feng Lu tried to grab Feng Wu behind her as a life-saving straw. However, Feng Wu would never let that happen. She was an excellent swimmer. The moment they hit the water, she dove in and swam downward. Deep down in the water, Feng Wu swam as swiftly as a fish. She paddled and stroked before long. She was 10 meters away from the duo. Holding onto a piece of driftwood, Feng Wu smiled as she watched Feng Lu torture Fairy Muyao. That was so much fun. To struggle for her life, Fairy Muyao spared no effort. Her blow almost bashed Feng Lu's head in. But that was the best option for Fairy Muyao at the moment, for only by knocking Feng Lu out could she climb ashore and stay alive. Otherwise she would die here in the water. Fairy Muyao then remembered Feng Wu. Chapter 124 The Crown Prince Likes Me. Chapter 124 The Crown Prince Likes Me. It was all because of her. That cunning, sinister woman. A moment ago, Fairy Muyao thought it was her victory, but here she was struggling for her life. Just then, a fist landed on Fairy Muyao's forehead. Feng Lu was furious. Someone had hit her. Without thinking, she deemed Feng Wu the culprit. Ah! Feng Wu! Die! Die now! Feng Lu went berserk. She burst into a round of frantic attacks, aiming at Fairy Muyao's forehead. Thump! 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 Feng Lu was frighteningly strong. Caught by surprise, Fairy Muyao was hit in the temple. The pain brought tears to her eyes. That really hurt. Fairy Muyao went wild with rage. Damn you! She almost had a heart attack. This crazy woman Feng Lu not only pulled her back and choked her. She was hitting her now? Fairy Muyao was the daughter of a noble family. How dare you hit me? You! Enraged, Fairy Muyao couldn't care less about anything else. She raised her fists and scuffled with Feng Lu. What a catfight! Feng Wu didn't leave. She sat down on the bank and laughed until her belly ached. This was so much fun. She swore up and down that her initial plan was only to have Feng Lu stop Fairy Muyao from getting out of the water so soon. As it turned out, Feng Lu had outdone herself. While Fairy Muyao and Feng Wu were fighting and Feng Wu was enjoying herself, footsteps came their way. Feng Wu finally passed gas when she had been underwater just then. The water had probably stopped the smell from coming out. Hence, Feng Wu figured that she should probably stay in the moat until she stopped farting. Thus, breathing through a reed in her mouth, Feng Wu sank back in, until her head was completely emerged. The road next to the moat had always been a busy one. Now that Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu had made so much noise, many locals came out to see what it was about. Before long, a crowd had gathered around the spot. It was their first time seeing two young ladies fight in the water. Everyone cried out in surprise and found it a most remarkable scene. It has to be a very big grudge. That blow looks so painful. Look, the girl in the yellow dress could have jumped out of the water, but the one in purple keeps pulling her back. They're tearing at each other's hair. Holy crap. I thought those pretty noble young ladies were all graceful and elegant. I see they don't fight any differently from shrews. That's worse than a peevish shrew. Gosh, this is so eye-opening. Even the fierce folk of northern border city couldn't help but be amazed. Right now, Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu were getting even with each other for hatred new and old. Of course Feng Lu knew about Fairy Muyao's fondness for Jun Linyuan. Of course Fairy Muyao noticed that Feng Lu wanted to throw herself at the crown prince. It was just that Feng Wu had attracted most of their hatred this whole time, and they had considered her their common enemy. Now that Feng Wu was gone, they turned on each other right away. Feng Lu, don't tell me that you don't like the crown prince. Grabbing Feng Lu's hair, Fairy Muyao tried to throw her onto the bank. Feng Lu punched Fairy Muyao in the eye with her fist. His Royal Highness likes me. Stop flattering yourself. Fairy Muyao almost choked on her own spit. Chapter 125. What a sister you've got there. Chapter 125. What a sister you've got there. The crown prince likes you? Are you nuts? Who the hell do you think you are? Fairy Muyao was so angry that she broke out laughing. Would a godlike figure like the crown prince like Feng Lu? How smug could she be? Fairy Muyao's condescending tone enraged Feng Lu again. Of course the crown prince liked her. Why else had he chosen to visit the Feng manor of all places? Go to hell. Feng Lu began to throw punches at Fairy Muyao again. Instantly water splashed everywhere, making quite a scene. Footsteps came their way, and soon several people showed up on the bank. Apart from Feng Sun and his two companions, Yuminji was also here. Because of the fierce catfight between Feng Lu and Fairy Muyao, no one noticed Feng Wu, who was still hiding under the water. Shit! What's going on here? A water fight. Staring at the two girls who were frantically tearing out each other's hair in the moat, Feng Sun's eyes popped out. He looked very excited. I had no idea that girls could fight like that. This is insane. Feng Yiran, what a sister you've got there. Feng Yiran almost rolled his eyes at Feng Sun. Of course Feng Sun could watch happily as an onlooker, for what was happening didn't concern him at all. However, as Feng Lu's own brother, Feng Yiran couldn't just stand there and watch. Pressing his toes down on the ground, Feng Yiran spread out his arms and jumped off the bank like a big eagle. With a sweep of his hands, both girls were scooped out of the water and thrown onto solid ground. He had expected his intervention to stop the fight, but the two girls only rolled around on the ground and kept on exchanging blows. And they were screaming as they fought. His Royal Highness likes me. He's mine. In your dreams. No, in your dreams. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. Everyone was astonished. What were they looking at here? Mouth slightly open, Feng Sun gave Jun Linyuan, who was as undisturbed and indecipherable as ever, a strange look. Boss Jun, those two are fighting over you there. Aren't you going to say something? If one asked Feng Sun, their boss Jun was the source of all disasters. Girls simply went crazy when that guy was around. Jun Linyuan only darted him a bone-chilling glance and uttered 6 words. Do you have a death wish? Cough, cough. That was the end of Feng Sun's teasing. Feng Yiran's cheeks twitched as he watched Feng Lu roll around on the ground, covered in mud. He couldn't take it anymore. For not only were the local folk standing around, pointing at the two girls, the nonchalant, enigmatic Jun Linyuan was also watching. Stop. Right now. Face dark, Feng Yiran reached out and picked Feng Lu up as easily as an eagle handling a chicken. Feng Lu had lost her head in her fury. She yelled as she struggled. Brother, let go of me. She called me cheap and she's trying to take the crown prince away from me. I'm going to kill her. Feng Yiran really felt like throwing this idiot back into the moat. Slap. The hard slap to Feng Lu's face disoriented her and she saw stars. Before she could break into tears, Feng Yiran turned her around to face Jun Linyuan. I dare you to say another word. Then, Feng Lu saw the lofty teenager that seemed to come with his own halo. Why, your Royal Highness? Feng Lu looked down and saw her ragged clothes, which were filthy beyond repair from her rolling around in the mud with Fairy Muyao. She then recalled what a shrew she had been. Chapter 126 Because you two are uglier than her? Chapter 126 Because you two are uglier than her. Feng Lu's head went blank and her heart nearly stopped. Holy shit! And she wasn't the only one lamenting, so was Fairy Muyao next to her. She looked as sorry a sight as Feng Lu. She had acted like a shrew as much as Feng Lu had. Feng Lu! Oh God! Burying her face in her hands, Fairy Muyao wished that she could pass out right now. She had done all those things in front of the Crown Prince. She felt like killing herself right now. Let her die. Why couldn't she pass out now? She didn't want to talk to anyone. Just as she was about to pretend to faint, Jun Linyuan shifted his dangerous, grim gaze to Feng Lu and Fairy Muyao and asked in a nonchalant voice, "What happened? What happened?" Fairy Muyao's frozen brain finally began to work again. Right, it was Feng Wu. Both she and Feng Lu were wounded, not to mention that they had greatly embarrassed themselves in front of Jun Linyuan, but Feng Wu didn't have a scratch. Fairy Muyao couldn't allow that to happen. Fairy Muyao calmed down immediately. Brushing away a lock of hair sticking to her forehead, she wept. Feng Wu did it. It was all her fault. She tried to kill us. That astonished everyone. Why was Feng Wu involved? Moreover, she had just accused Feng Wu of trying to kill her. Feng Wu? Killing the daughter of a noble family? She had to be insane to plot something like that. It was such a wild accusation. Since Fairy Muyao had made up her mind to slander Feng Wu, she began to make up stories. Biting her lower lip, she said, Feng Wu was so evil. She pushed us into the moat. She tried to drown us. Feng Lu, who had been standing there with a blank face, was suddenly woken up by those words and came back to her senses. That was right. It was Feng Wu. They had to blame Feng Wu for everything. Feng Sun was displeased to hear that. Why is Feng Wu involved? Hasn't she been back at home this whole time? Heh. Fairy Muyao smirked. Feng Wu? Stay at home? A woman as fickle and lascivious as her could never stay indoors. Feng Sun was even more disgruntled now, and he cast a stern look at Fairy Muyao. Watch your mouth, young lady. You're only ruining your own reputation talking like that. I know you don't like Feng Wu, but that was over the line. She has friends. He made it clear that he was backing Feng Wu up. Tears welled up in Fairy Muyao's pretty eyes as she bit her lower lip, looking aggrieved. Young lord, all you ever do is stand up for Feng Wu. But what about me? Feng Wu pushed me and Feng Lu into the moat. We nearly drowned. That's right. Despite her hatred for Fairy Muyao, Feng Lu couldn't act out now, for she had to be Fairy Muyao's ally for the time being. Clenching her fists, she wailed, Why are you on Feng Wu's side when she tried to kill us? Just because she's pretty? Feng Sun knew perfectly well what was going on here. It was clear that Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu were up to something. They were just angling for sympathy by acting all pitiful. Hence he smirked. Feng Wu pushed you in? Why would she do that? Because you two are uglier than her? Feng Wu, who was breathing through the reed under the water, burst out laughing. Gurgle. The sound of bursting bubbles came from a few steps away. Jun Linyuan darted a casual look at that reed. Chapter 127 They're lying. Chapter 127 They're lying. Both Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu blanched at those words. However, they no longer felt as embarrassed as they did earlier. Especially Fairy Muyao. Biting her lower lip, she went all teary-eyed and her voice was pitiful and indignant. Feng Wu was seducing a man when we ran into her. We were witnesses. That was why she tried to kill us. Feng Lu nodded immediately. Yes, that's right. We both saw Feng Wu having her way with a teenager in this alley. Feng Yuan felt like throttling Feng Lu. How big an idiot was she? Even if she wanted to frame Feng Wu, couldn't she find another excuse? At the end of the day, Feng Lu and Feng Wu were cousins from the same clan. If Feng Wu's reputation was ruined, Feng Lu would be equally affected. That plot would cause destruction for both sides, and she was telling the whole world about it. What was she thinking? Feng Yuan wished that he could somehow stuff his sister back into their mother's womb to give her a new brain. Right now it was obvious that Feng Sun was vexed. Jun Linyuan's face had turned so grim that the temperature seemed to drop. Feng Sun grabbed Fairy Muyao by the collar. "What did you say?" Fairy Muyao grasped this as her last resort. She said loudly, "We saw with our own eyes that useless Feng Wu doing filthy things in this alley with a teenager. If we hadn't run into them, they'd be. Yes. He wore a pink robe and was very easy to spot. I saw everything. I swear to God." Feng Lu also said loudly. Because of their common enemy, Feng Lu and Fairy Muyao, who had been at each other's throats, were back on the same side again. Under the water, Feng Wu frowned at those words. Those two were really shameless. Feng Sun smirked. "You just called Feng Wu useless. So, how is someone that useless able to push you two into the moat? Muyao, if I remember correctly, you're a level 6 spiritual master, aren't you?" Feng Sun then turned to Feng Lu. "And you're what?" "Level 5. Level 5 and level 6 spiritual masters were pushed into the moat by Feng Wu, who has 0 cultivation. Are you idiots or do you think I'm one?" Feng Sun drew closer, and the two girls stumbled back. Oh, of course Feng Wu couldn't do it herself, but that man she was flirting with, he helped Feng Wu push us in. Panic-stricken, Fairy Muyao cried out. Infuriated, blue veins popped on Feng Sun's forehead. Jun Linyuan stepped out, narrowing his eyes and looking very intimidating. He was about to speak when, "They're lying." A little boy less than 5 years old broke free from his mother's arms, ran toward them on his short legs, and pointed at Fairy Muyao. "She's lying." "Oh." Feng Sun crouched down until his eyes were on the same level as the little boy's. "What did she lie about? They're bad people. She's the worst one." The little boy gestured at Fairy Muyao. "She put a knife to Sister Wu's neck. She said she wanted to destroy Sister Wu's face." Fairy Muyao's stomach lurched. She couldn't recall anyone passing by at that time, so how did the child know about that? Fairy Muyao smirked right away. Lying kids will be taken away by wolves at night. She was blatantly threatening him. Chapter 128. You like Feng Wu, don't you? Chapter 128. You like Feng Wu, don't you? The mother immediately picked the boy up in her arms and sneered. "Young lady, the gods are watching us from above. You can't throw wild accusations at someone like that, or you'll be cast into hell after you die. My Xiaoyang doesn't tell lies." Pointing at a row of houses behind her, the mother said, "We live right over there and we can see the bridge from our window. Xiaoyang and I weren't the only ones who saw what you did. The others saw it too." A middle-aged woman stepped out. "Yes, that's right. You tried to harm Miss Wu, but you're blaming it all on Miss Wu now." An uncle also stepped out. "Miss Wu is the most virtuous girl. She didn't do anything with no man. What you said was bullshit. What did she ever do to you to deserve all that slander? You're shameless. You'll get struck by a thunderbolt." After that, more and more people stood out to criticize Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu. Northern Border City was a big place, and most of the people who lived in the downtown area had received help from Feng Wu before. Thus they all supported her. They viewed Feng Wu as their own beloved kid. With so many people talking at the same time, the effect was quite intimidating. Fairy Muyao was bewildered and so was Feng Lu. They never expected Feng Wu to be this popular with the common folk. Watching Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu drown in the angry rebukes of the people, Feng Sun never felt so satisfied. He could still recognize a few faces in the crowd. Only hours before, these people had brandished kitchen knives and chopping boards at him because he said one bad word about Feng Wu. It almost gave him a heart attack. Great, it was Muyao's turn now. To Feng Sun, there was something therapeutic about watching Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu get annihilated. The folk berated and scolded Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu at the top of their lungs. The people of Northern Border City were fierce and tough, and they had a very large vocabulary when it came to venting their anger. Surrounded by the angry crowd, Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu were driven crazy by all the voices. Given their lofty status, they had never been called names in public, let alone by so many people. You unruly people." Fairy Muyao fumed. Just then a figure in pink rushed through the crowd. "Jun Linyuan, I've been looking for you everywhere. Why are you people here?" It took me such a long time. A stunning teenager arrived as swiftly as a gust of wind, almost knocking Fairy Muyao over. It was none other than Yuminji himself. Jun Linyuan darted a look at Yuminji, his eyes revealing nothing. Feng Sun glared at Yuminji, pissed. Why are you here? Do we know you? Yuminji ignored the question. He stared at Feng Sun and asked, I heard that you were looking for that ugly girl? Have you found her? Where is she? Where? Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu recognized Yuminji's pink robe at that moment and their faces lit up. Jumping at Yuminji from either side, they cried out in unison. It was him. Him. He was the one doing devious things with Feng Wu in the alley. Immediately, all eyes were on Yuminji. Why are you all looking at me like that? Yuminji was utterly confused. Fairy Muyao smirked. It was you. What did I do? Yuminji looked bewildered. Chapter 129 Me? Do away with you. Chapter 129 Me? Do away with you. You like Feng Wu, don't you? Fairy Muyao stared at Yuminji. Although Fairy Muyao only saw them from behind, she was sure that Yuminji had been standing very close to Feng Wu. She couldn't speak for Feng Wu, but Yuminji couldn't keep his eyes off Feng Wu. He had to have a crush on her. Yuminji's rationale, on the other hand, went as followed. Feng Wu was so pretty and he had always loved good-looking people, so what was wrong with liking Feng Wu? However, at that moment a figure showed up behind Fairy Muyao. It was none other than Feng Wu, who could no longer stay in the river and had just climbed out and changed into some dry clothes. Immediately, Yuminji straightened his back and glared at Fairy Muyao. That's bullshit. Me? Like Feng Wu? Hey, are you blind or stupid? You must have lost your mind to say that. Fairy Muyao fell silent. She had never expected Yuminji to deny it. Shouldn't he admit it right away in order to win Feng Wu's heart? Feng Sun would then turn on Yuminji and the two guys would start fighting. She could then stand by and watch. She had had everything planned out, but Yuminji somehow stopped right before he walked into the trap. Fairy Muyao almost had a stroke. Yuminji stared at Fairy Muyao as if he was looking at an idiot. Do you know how much damage you'll cause if the girl I like heard what you said? Do you? Are you trying to ruin my life or what? Those words were actually meant for Feng Wu. Fairy Muyao cursed inwardly. Yuminji was running around Feng Wu like a puppy. That two-faced boy. Who's the girl you like then? Fairy Muyao snorted. Why should I tell you? Who are you to meddle in my business? Looking Fairy Muyao up and down, Yuminji suddenly came up with an outrageous comment. Gosh, don't tell me you like me? Hey, I'm warning you. First of all, you're not pretty enough. Secondly, you're too evil. Moreover, you look so untalented. Anyway, stay away from me. Fairy Muyao dropped her head again. She could sense the sneers the others were giving her now. She was so frustrated. Why did she feel like she couldn't talk to Yuminji like a normal person? Moreover, they were so off topic now. They were supposed to be talking about him and Feng Wu. All of a sudden, Feng Sun said something fantastic. Yuminji Muyao told us that you joined hands with Feng Wu to throw her and Feng Lu into the moat to try and silence them. Did you do it? Yuminji stared at Feng Sun in disbelief. Are you nuts? Before Feng Sun could say another word, Yuminji pointed a finger at Fairy Muyao. Why do I need help to kill her? I can do it 100 times over with one finger. If you don't believe me, I can do it right now. A chill ran down Fairy Muyao's spine at those words. She went stiff and broke into a cold sweat. She had been wrong. She had been so wrong. She only saw how indifferent Jun Linyuan was toward Yuminji. However, she forgot that Yuminji could easily finish her off with one finger, or even a single strand of hair. Yuminji felt humiliated. He glared at Fairy Muyao until his eyes bulged. Oh, me? Do away with them? What gave you the idea that I need to do something like that myself? Chapter 130 Jun Linyuan was so frightening. Chapter 130. Jun Linyuan was so frightening. A team of elders followed him everywhere. Okay? The elders complained all the time about having nothing to do, okay? And they were suggesting that he, Yuminji, needed to do such a petty thing himself. When he lost his temper, Yuminji could look very intimidating. He pressed on toward Fairy Muyao, who stumbled back in fear. She had never felt as regretful as she did now. How could she have forgotten that Yuminji was the sacred son of the Dark Court and heir to the Dark Dynasty? The Dark Dynasty that killed people like flies. At that thought, Fairy Muyao turned to run away. However, she jumped as soon as she saw the person standing behind her. You. Fairy Muyao pointed at Feng Wu. How long have you been standing there? A smile emerged on Feng Wu's stunning face. I got here when you were slandering me about flirting with some guy. Why are you done? Looking into Feng Wu's eyes, Fairy Muyao felt her stomach churn and the hair stand up on her back. Involuntarily, she stumbled back. Feng Wu took another step forward and Fairy Muyao stepped back again. Realizing that Yuminji was right behind her, Fairy Muyao felt cornered. Hence, she could only stare back at Feng Wu and said, Why you tried to kill me? How dare you stand before me now? I'm a princess. The princess of Mu Prince residence. How dare you try to harm me? Teehee, Feng Wu chuckled. With everything that has happened, you still won't admit your mistake. Muyao, you must be the most shameless person I've ever met. You tried to harm me. You did. You dragged me into the moat and that's the truth. Fairy Muyao would never tell the truth. How could she? Her only way out was to keep denying it. She couldn't bring up Yuminji and Feng Wu's alleged relationship now, for she was afraid of enraging Yuminji. Instead, she made Feng Wu her sole target. Yes, you tried to harm us. Feng Lu came to Fairy Muyao's aid. Feng Wu was their common enemy. So, compared with Fairy Muyao, Feng Lu hated Feng Wu more. Feng Sun smirked. Level 5 and Level 6 spiritual masters are claiming that they were harmed by a good-for-nothing. Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu blushed, but they stuck to their story. Yes, they did. Feng Wu had no evidence, so there was nothing she could do about them. They had already humiliated themselves in front of Jun Linyuan. The last thing they wanted was for him to see them as merciless women. Seeing that Feng Wu was under attack somehow, Yuminji felt a little sympathy for her. Wait, sympathy? For this sharp-tongued girl? That wasn't happening. He chucked that thought away immediately. Just when Feng Wu was ready to push Fairy Muyao and Feng Lu into her trap, a figure stepped out from the crowd. Jun Linyuan. Everyone involuntarily turned to look at the unmatched, formidable teenager. Although he hadn't said a word, no one dared to disregard him, for he was like a supreme being among them. Jun Linyuan stood half an arm away in front of Feng Wu, and gave Fairy Muyao a cold, brooding glance. That one glance was enough to make Fairy Muyao's heart race. She went stiff and felt as if someone had pushed her down an abyss. What was the meaning of that glance? What did the Crown Prince want from her? The truth. The two words stabbed into Fairy Muyao's chest like the sharpest blade. Chapter 131. Are you afraid of me? Chapter 131. Are you afraid of me? Truth. Fairy Muyao shuddered as a chill ran down her spine. Too scared to look into Jun Linyuan's eyes, she moved her lips, trying to repeat what she said. However, those cold, piercing eyes were staring at her and she felt imminent danger, as if one wrong word from her and her head would be cracked open. It was such a terrifying aura. Lie to me and, despite the indifference in his voice, there was something so dangerous about it that she was having a hard time breathing. Was he going to say, lie to me and I'll kill you? SSSS. Fairy Muyao drew in her breath. She was so scared. Before she knew it, Fairy Muyao had pressed her hand to her chest and she felt her heart thumping. Not from shyness but real fear. She was too scared to even act normally. If Fairy Muyao didn't dare to make up stories anymore. In a trembling voice she said, we did it. We tried to throw mud at Feng Wu and we wanted to ruin her face. We did it first, but Feng Wu really dragged us into the river. Before she could finish, Fairy Muyao burst into tears and ran away. Feng Lu was baffled. Fairy Muyao had admitted everything. That idiot. Did she even realize the consequences of that? However, when Jun Linyuan turned his sharp eyes on Feng Lu, she felt as if she had been pushed into an icehouse and her heart almost gave out. She finally realized why Fairy Muyao was so frightened. The next second, Feng Lu shoved Feng Yi away and ran after Fairy Muyao. She ran faster than a cheetah. Everyone was speechless. They were scared off just like that. Linyuan's impeccably handsome face looked a little confused. He darted a look at Feng and frowned. Why did they run away? Feng smacked his forehead and looked up at the sky. The two girls were scared off before Boss Jun even began his interrogation. What was that all about? Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Boss Jun, you're just too scary. Linyuan frowned. What did I do? Others try to subdue their enemy without fighting, but you can defeat yours without even starting a war. They just roll away and die on their own. That's the effect you have on other people, Feng said in amazement. Feng Wu looked at Linyuan approvingly. Linyuan was the nemesis of people like Fairy Muyao, who were too stubborn to admit their mistakes. He didn't even have to speak. With a single glance he could scare people to tears. Problem. Linyuan stared at Feng Wu, his eyes like bottomless pools. Feng Wu's heart lurched and raced as she looked into those brilliant, brooding eyes. She waved her hands immediately. And no problem. No problem at all. Are you afraid of me? Linyuan frowned and looked a little displeased. Feng Wu's heart sank. She was about to answer when Yuminji cut her off. Yuminji had been watching Linyuan and Feng Wu on the side. The slender teenager's robe fluttered in the wind, as did his long black hair. He looked invincible. The girl was slim, had great posture, and was otherworldly beautiful. It was as if an invisible frame encircled around them, blurring out everything else. Somehow, Yuminji felt a dull pain in his chest. He rubbed the spot. Had he messed up in his cultivation training? Frowning, Yuminji stomped toward them and glowered at Feng Wu. Chapter 132. Why did she look so familiar from behind? Chapter 132. Why did she look so familiar from behind? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment, her limpid eyes filled with confusion. What? Yuminji had no idea where all his temper was coming from. He only stared at Feng Wu, looking very angry. All of a sudden, he reached out to grab Feng Wu's hand. However, Linyuan, who had been aloof and undisturbed this whole time, stepped out and stood in front of Feng Wu. Feng Wu had no choice but to make way for him. Yuminji's eyes met Linyuan's. Both were tall, had long legs, and were about the same height. They were equally handsome and capable, which turned this into a duel between two princes. Their eyes were on the same level. Neither would budge, and one could almost see the sparks flying in the air. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Obviously, Linyuan and Yuminji didn't see eye to eye, and would jump at each other like fighting roosters whenever they met. So, in order to avoid being turned into collateral damage here, it was better for her to slink off now. Plus, she needed to release gas again. Hence, while the two princes tried to kill each other with their eyes, their stares so intense that one could see icy shards and fiery sparks flying in all directions, Feng Wu took the chance. She took one step back, then another. Before long, she was 10 meters away. Good job. Feng Wu cheered herself on, turned around, and was ready to sprint off when, all of a sudden, a familiar voice came from behind. Hey, little Feng Wu. Where are you going? It was Feng Sun. Feng Wu almost snapped. She had to take a very deep breath to keep her temper at bay. What had she ever done to Feng Sun? Why did the guy have to ruin her day all the time? Feng Sun was still urging her. Little Feng Wu, get over here. Boss Jun is right here. Why are you running that way? You dumb girl. Feng Wu breathed in. Deep breaths were the only thing that could calm her down now. Otherwise she was sure that she would pounce at Feng Sun and punch him in the face. Wait, little Feng Wu, you look so familiar from behind. Why do I feel like I've seen it before? Staring at Feng Wu's slim back, something clicked in his head. Those words gave Feng Wu the shivers. Shit. No. This wasn't happening. At that thought, Feng Wu turned around immediately, hurried to Feng Sun's side, and smacked him on the head, waking him up from his reverie. Hey, what was that for? I almost figured it out. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu, a little displeased. Feng Wu sighed in relief inwardly. She then glowered at Feng Sun and said grumpily, You called me back, didn't you? I was going to get you people some water, seeing that you all looked tired. But you had to get me back here, so forget about it. Feng Wu found a random excuse, and Feng Sun didn't suspect a thing. Right now, Yuminji and Jun Linyuan were still engaged in their staring contest. To be more precise, Yuminji was the one staring. Jun Linyuan, on the other hand, had already raised his head to savor the clouds in the sky. Feng Sun patted Yuminji on the shoulder. Stop doing that. We have no time to waste now. Our priority now is to catch that ugly girl. Catch the ugly girl? You really found her? That successfully distracted Yuminji. Of course we did. Look, taking out that drawing from his chest pocket, Feng Sun tossed it to Yuminji. See for yourself. Yuminji opened the scroll eagerly, and immediately saw the person in the drawing. Her features couldn't be any more ordinary, but... Chapter 133, You're competing with me. Chapter 133. You're competing with me. That pair of eyes were so tranquil and splendid that they seemed to suck out one's soul. How could there be such beautiful eyes in this world? The very thought made Yuminji dart a look at Feng Wu. As a result, he was almost swept off his feet by her enchanting beauty. Luckily, he was committed enough to his goddess. However, when he looked into Feng Wu's bright black eyes that reminded him of a starry night, Yuminji's heart skipped a beat. Damn it! Why did he find Feng Wu's eyes so beautiful as well? Was he really a capricious, fickle, and unfaithful man as he was said to be? Yuminji was baffled for a moment and began to doubt himself. Seeing how Yuminji was suddenly dazed, Feng Wu had no idea what had happened. She then thought about making fun of him. Leaning closer, she chuckled and said, "So, is that a portrait of the goddess you couldn't stop talking about? Let me have a look." Yuminji came back to himself immediately. He wanted to hide the scroll but was too late. Feng Wu saw it. "Wait, where is that super gorgeous goddess of yours? Where is she? Where? Why can't I see her anywhere?" Seeing Yuminji's dark face, Feng Wu laughed so hard that her belly ached. What a face Yuminji had there. "What? Goddess? That ugly girl?" Feng Sun said to Feng Wu grumpily. "He's joking. The guy's all about good looks. There's no way he would fall in love with the ugly girl." Feng Wu was waiting for Yuminji's agreement. With his big ego, he was bound to deny that she was his goddess. But what happened next was beyond Feng Wu's expectations. "Why are you calling her ugly? I think she's pretty. Much prettier than you." "Humph." Yuminji refuted. That baffled Feng Wu a little. No, Yuminji couldn't possibly. Had she gone too far? Before Feng Wu could react, Yuminji pointed at the scroll and made a vow. "I, Yuminji, hereby swear that the girl in the painting is the only one I'll marry. She's mine." Feng Wu didn't make a sound. She took an involuntary step back. Talk about dropping a stone on one's own foot. She had just dropped a very big one. An intense yet cold gaze landed on Feng Wu, which came from a pair of brooding, indecipherable eyes. Feng Wu raised her head involuntarily and looked right into Jun Linyuan's black eyes. Her stomach turned. Face grim, Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu. But with a wave, the scroll was in his hand. "Hey, give it back. Jun Linyuan, give her back to me." Yuminji was agitated. Jun Linyuan raised his right hand over his head, and Yuminji jumped up in anger. However, the scroll had disappeared from Jun Linyuan's hand. Jun Linyuan had put it away. As he interacted with Yuminji, Jun Linyuan kept his intense gaze on Feng Wu, examining the back of her head. Feng Wu thought her head was on fire. "Give it back." Jun Linyuan smirked. Jun Linyuan. Something worse then dawned on Yuminji. He had chosen the ugly girl back in Frozen Forest because Jun Linyuan treated her differently. "So, don't tell me you like the ugly girl too? Are you going to compete with me?" Glaring at Jun Linyuan, Yuminji asked, "Are you? Answer me." Chapter 134, Are you dumb or what? Chapter 134. Are you dumb or what? Glaring at Jun Linyuan, Yuminji gestured and repeated the question. "Answer me. Do you like her or not?" Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes, the grim look in them making one shudder. The two guys were fighting again. Everyone looked at Yuminji as if he was an idiot. What was wrong with this teenager? Would June Linyuan like that ugly girl? Who was Yuminji kidding? That was preposterous. Feng Sun was speechless. Boss June likes that ugly girl? What gave you that idea? If you like her that much, fine, she's all yours. June Linyuan gave Feng Sun an indescribable look. Yuminji, on the other hand, was delighted to hear that. However, he blurted out again, June Linyuan, if you don't like the ugly girl, do you like Feng Wu? Then, the next second, everyone was examining Feng Wu in a strange way, which made her blush. This was so humiliating. The sun would rise in the west first before June Linyuan liked her. Being stared at by all those eyes, Feng Wu wished more than anything that she could disappear at that moment. Feng Sun took pity on Feng Wu and came to her rescue. He chuckled and said, Yuminji, what are you even thinking? Since when would Boss June like a useless girl? Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. That look almost gave Feng Sun a heart attack. He replied with a shrug. But that's what you are, useless. Feng Wu almost had a stroke, but she couldn't give a retort. She took a deep breath. Calm down, calm down. Now that she had taken the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, all she needed was a quiet place to restart her cultivation. Useless? We'll see about that. Feng Wu raised an eyebrow and darted a look at Feng Sun. Young Lord Feng. What? Feng Sun shuddered at Feng Wu's formal tone. What stage are you at? Feng Sun replied without hesitation. I'm a spiritual grandmaster. He then said in smug satisfaction, anyway, it's a stage you'll never be able to reach in your life. Why are you asking? It'll only upset you. Spiritual grandmaster? This stage consists of 3 stars. Should I assume that you've reached the 3rd star already? Feng Wu asked calmly. The spiritual master stage was the only one which consisted of 9 levels. All stages beyond that used a 3-star ranking. As far as Feng Wu knew, Fairy Muyao and the others were still at the spiritual master stage, but Zhuo Qinghuan had reached the spiritual grandmaster stage. Feng Sun gloated. Yup. I'm about to break into the spiritual elder stage. Are you envious of me? Sigh if you hadn't. Feng Sun thought what he said would upset Feng Wu. But he saw that rather than get angry, Feng Wu smiled a little. Was it so hard a blow to her that she couldn't think straight? Seeing that no one would talk to him, Yuminji was going to say something when Feng Sun cut him off. All right, back to business. Our top priority here is to catch the ugly girl. Agreed? Feng Sun eyed June Linyuan as he spoke. Seeing that all June Linyuan did was savor the view of frozen forest in the distance, Feng Sun saw that the guy clearly didn't want to get involved. Hence, Feng Sun became the one who called the shots. I've told the mayor to close all the city gates and seal off all the water channels. That is to say, the ugly girl is right here in northern border city. Let's split up into 4 groups and each take a city gate. We'll start our search from the gates and move toward the center of the city. That cunning girl can't possibly escape this time. Oh. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. The guy was very serious and dedicated to this task. He had a strongly defined profile, exquisite features, and eyes as clear as water. His tone was decisive, his words logical, and he was very attractive. Had it not been for the fact that he was planning to catch her, Feng Wu would actually applaud him. All right. I've talked you through the plan. Let's split up into groups now. Chapter 135 Boss June obviously doesn't like Feng Wu. Chapter 135. Boss June obviously doesn't like Feng Wu. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. If Feng Sun one day found out that he had bragged about how to catch her right in front of her, she wondered if he would want to kill her all over again. Well, she had been doing these things frequently enough that Feng Sun was probably used to it already. Feng Wu still almost burst out laughing at that thought. She could only drop her head to her chest and keep a very low profile so that no one would notice her flushed cheeks, which was a result of suppressing her laughter. Feng Sun gestured at himself. I'll take the east gate with little Feng Wu here. Xian the second, you take the south gate. Feng Yiran the west. Yuminji the north. Feng Sun deemed his plan a stroke of genius. Hadn't Boss June made it clear that he wouldn't become entangled in such banal worldly affairs? Hence, Feng Sun didn't include him at all. June Linyuan, who had been looking at the mountains in the horizon, frowned a little. Before he could speak, Yuminji jumped to his feet and protested. Why is little Feng Wu with you? I won't have it. Feng Sun smirked. Bite me. No problem. Let's do it now. A one-on-one fight. Yuminji was as irascible as any hot-headed teenager his age, and it only took the tiniest spark to make him explode. He was ready for battle even as he spoke. A fight was on the verge of breaking out when Jun Linyuan frowned and said calmly, Stop. Boss Jun. Feng Sun turned to look at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan, I dare you to take his side. Yuminji stomped his foot in rage. However, Jun Linyuan only gave Feng Wu a nonchalant glance from the corner of his eye and ordered in an impassive voice, You with me. She, alone with Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu's heart almost exploded right there and then. No. Feng Wu waved her hands in a hurry. You guys go ahead. I'll sit this one out. The ugly girl has never done anything to me. Why should I go after her? Hey. All she wanted now was to find a quiet place to cultivate. Feng Wu was still waving her hands when Jun Linyuan caught her wrist with his long thin fingers. That promptly solved the problem. They were off. Behind them, everyone was dumbfounded. Wasn't Boss Jun supposed to be a neat freak who never touched anyone with his hands? He had just touched Feng Wu. Although there was a layer of clothing between them, it still felt so weird. Xianyi looked puzzled. Feng Sun, on the other hand, looked very guilty. Sigh. Boss Jun obviously doesn't like Feng Wu, but he took her away just to help me. I owe Boss Jun so much. Xianyi darted a dubious look at Feng Sun. Are you sure that's what's happening here? Isn't it? Feng Sun looked at Xianyi bemused. Are you suggesting that Boss Jun took Feng Wu with him because he wants to be alone with her? Isn't that possible? Xianyi didn't think the matter was that simple. Ha ha ha. Feng Sun cracked up, as if he had heard the funniest thing. Holding his belly, he doubled over with laughter. Xianyi, you're so silly. Gosh, I'm laughing my ass off here. Ha 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 ha. Xianyi threw a dirty look at him, shook his head, and left for the south gate. An idea struck Feng Iran all of a sudden. Was it possible that Jun Linyuan really liked Feng Wu? Given Feng Wu's stunning beauty, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to assume that Jun Linyuan had fallen in love with her. But that couldn't be. If that was the case, why did he break off the engagement in the first place back then? Feng Iran tried his best to remember everything, down to the very last detail. Soon, he recalled the look Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu. Chapter 136 Stop Laughing. Chapter 136 Stop Laughing. There had been nothing remotely affectionate in Jun Linyuan's grim, haughty eyes. Hence, his conclusion was that not only didn't Jun Linyuan like Feng Wu, he actually found her repulsive. Feng Iran heaved a sigh of relief and quickly headed for the west gate. Yuminji was the only one left. He was about to set out for the north gate when Feng Sun stopped him. Halt! I'm taking that road. Glaring at Feng Sun, Yuminji said. Which way should I go then? Feng Sun smirked. You like that ugly girl, don't you? How can I be sure that you won't cut her loose on purpose? So you're not taking any gate today. After that, Feng Sun quickly left for the north gate, leaving Yuminji behind on his own. Yuminji didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were walking together. The busiest street ran through the eastern part of the city. However, Feng Wu was on edge. She found her own reaction rather strange as well. She was able to stay level-headed no matter what came her way, but why was she so fidgety around Jun Linyuan? Jun Linyuan walked in front and Feng Wu stayed half a meter behind him. Both kept their silence and it felt rather awkward. Feng Wu clenched her fists. She was genuinely concerned. What should she do if she suddenly wanted to pass gas? She could fool Feng Sun, but even with her past and present lives put together, she still couldn't outsmart Jun Linyuan. All of a sudden Jun Linyuan stopped. Feng Wu, whose head had been down this whole face and her face screwed up with the effort of figuring out a solution, bumped into Jun Linyuan's firm straight back. Thump! Ouch! Covering her nose with one hand, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan with a frown as she drew in a breath. She had no idea that bumping into someone could be that painful. She felt as if she had smashed her nose into the hardest basalt. June Linyuan turned around to Feng Wu's face all puckered up and an accusing look in her teary eyes. That facial expression depended largely on how good-looking the person was. An accusing look from an ordinary person not only wouldn't achieve anything, it would also annoy the accused party. However, with Feng Wu's incredibly beautiful face, when she turned her teary, pitiful and resentful eyes on a person, she might as well, to use a phrase from her previous life, have set off an atomic bomb. Even someone as haughty and aloof as June Linyuan couldn't help but ask hesitantly, "Painful?" Still covering her nose, Feng Wu nodded with teary eyes. June Linyuan's frown grew bigger and his lips moved. Useless. Feng Wu's limpid eyes widened immediately and she glared at June Linyuan. Pointing at him, she protested, "What kind of person are you? You bumped into me and you're telling me off." The fuming Feng Wu reminded him of a little quail. Somehow, June Linyuan's perpetual poker face cracked and his lips curled up a little. "Stop laughing." Feng Wu was pissed off. She was so aggrieved. Was he laughing at her now? June Linyuan didn't smile for years on end, but right now he was smiling. He was actually smiling with his eyes. His already handsome face looked unbelievably stunning. Feng Wu was dazed. She didn't know how to react. If it was solely because of his beautiful face, Feng Wu wouldn't be that way. However, what Feng Wu saw on June Linyuan's face was a warm, genial smile, which reminded her of a beam of sunlight shining down on a frozen river. The contrast of the two was simply indomitable. Chapter 137 He Really Didn't Pick on You? Chapter 137 He Really Didn't Pick on You. It reminded Feng Wu of a clear blue sky, the dappled shade of trees, and the moment ice cracked on a frozen river. He had the looks, the intelligence, the disposition, the imposing manner, the capabilities, and the unchallenged status. How could girls not throw themselves at June Linyuan like this? However, that solemn, detached, and unattainable June Linyuan who never showed any expression on his face had just smiled? Was her sorry state that funny? Once she came back to her senses, Feng Wu was vexed. She threw a dirty look at June Linyuan. However, instead of being offended, June Linyuan went on smiling. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu's head soon cooled down. This wasn't a good time to provoke June Linyuan. What she now needed to do most was find an opportunity to run away from him. She would be doomed if they reached the center of the city. At that thought, Feng Wu covered her nose and said in a muffled voice, "I'm hurt and I'm going home now. Go find that girl yourself. I'm off. Bye." However, Feng Wu only managed to take 2 steps before someone called her name in the distance. "Why, Feng Wu, here you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." Feng Wu froze on the spot. It was Yuminji, the teenager that wouldn't leave her alone. Why did he have to be so quick? Feng Wu felt like crying. It seemed that these people would never leave her alone. Feng Wu ignored him and ran in the other direction. However, Yuminji caught her by her braid right away. "Hey, I'm right here. Where do you think you're going?" Feng Wu had no choice but to go back with Yuminji. She was so pissed. "What happened to your nose?" Yuminji frowned when he saw Feng Wu's teary eyes and crestfallen expression. Feng Wu replied with a long sigh. She then asked in resignation, "Aren't you supposed to be headed to the North Gate? Why are you here?" "His Royal Highness and I have this direction covered." Yuminji glared at Feng Wu with his pretty eyes and jabbed a finger in her forehead. "You heartless thing. I'm here because I was worried that June Linyuan might take advantage of you. Don't you know what a guy is capable of when he's alone with a girl? How can someone as pretty as you have zero sense of self-protection?" Feng Wu stared at Yuminji speechless. She had the impulse to cover his mouth and stop him from talking altogether. Yuminji looked Feng Wu in the eye and his own eyes suddenly widened. "What happened? You've been crying, haven't you? Did June Linyuan really do something to you? I knew it. He was up to something when he dragged you away." He began to roll up his sleeves as he spoke. Feng Wu was mortified and she stopped Yuminji right away. "Stop it. Don't say another word. Someone as proud and aloof as June Linyuan taking advantage of her? He didn't even like her." What Yuminji said made it sound as if she actually had a crush on June Linyuan. Feng Sun would laugh his ass off if he was here. Yuminji stared at Feng Wu. "He really didn't pick on you." No, and no. Feng Wu very much wanted to tell Yuminji that actually, he was her victim. Will you just leave me alone, bro? Yuminji nodded and patted his chest. Good, I'm glad to hear that. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on you from now on and make sure that Jun Linyuan doesn't get a chance. Jun Linyuan gave Yuminji a "you idiot" look. Chapter 138 Finally Cultivation. Chapter 138. Finally Cultivation. Feng Wu was so embarrassed. Jun Linyuan had zero interest in her, okay? Yuminji was practically delusional. Yuminji snorted and ignored Jun Linyuan. Pulling Feng Wu to one side, he murmured, I'm telling you, all men are after good-looking girls. Your face is so beautiful that you're asking for trouble. You have to be on guard all the time, and make sure you don't just wander off with strangers. Feng Wu smacked her forehead, speechless. She turned to look at Jun Linyuan involuntarily, only to find his face growing darker and darker. Had that warm smile on his face earlier been a hallucination? Feng Wu was bewildered. As they walked, Feng Wu suddenly realized something. Which was, when did she last fart? 5 minutes ago? But she still didn't feel like releasing gas. 10 minutes passed, and still nothing. 20 minutes. They walked all the way from the gate to the mayor's manor at the center of the city, but still nothing happened. Feng Wu was guffawing in her head. Even fate was on her side now. The 4 groups rendezvoused outside the mayor's manor. Feng's son ran happily toward them and asked Feng Wu, Did you find anything on your way here? Despite her impulse to celebrate joyfully, Feng Wu put on a distressed expression and replied, No, we didn't. We never smelled that scent you described as smelly and pleasant at the same time. Feng Wu then turned to Yuminji. Did you smell anything? Frowning, Yuminji frowned and shook his head as he glared at Feng Suan. Didn't you say that we would definitely find her this way? Like 100%? You were so confident, but what do we have here? Feng Wu snickered inwardly and turned her gaze on Feng Suan. Feng Suan's face was all puckered up. He had no idea this was going to happen. Why did she stop releasing gas? Feng Wu waved at the others with a grin. I need to go back home now. You guys keep up the good work. She then gambled off, her thick ponytail swaying on the back of her head. It looked so youthful. Feng Sun didn't stop Feng Wu this time and let her leave. He was thinking back to all the times when the ugly girl tricked him over and over again. It was so outrageous. I'll catch her. I swear it. Feng Sun ground his teeth. Feng Wu ran all the way home, hopping around and humming a tune. Poor brother Feng Sun. If he knew one day that she had escaped right under his nose, would he go berserk? Well, he should be used to it by now, shouldn't he? Feng Wu chuckled at that thought. The immortal spiritual fruit juice had been turned into the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, which she had eaten already. Feng Wu rubbed her belly. Her dantian, which had stayed quiet for the past 5 years, was slowly heating up. The smile broadened on Feng Wu's face. Finally, she could resume her cultivation. Feng Wu did a run-up toward the wall and grabbed the top with her right hand. Then, with a perfect backward somersault, she landed lightly in the courtyard like a baby swallow. Feng Wu made a fist. She needed to hurry up with her cultivation before Jun Linyuan and the others came back. She could at least break through and turn into a level 1 spiritual master, right? She wondered if she could speed up her cultivation this second time round. Feng Wu pondered a million questions as she walked. She glanced at the courtyard in passing and spotted the clothes hanging there to dry. Chapter 139 I've never liked Jun Linyuan. Chapter 139. I've never liked Jun Linyuan. One look and Feng Wu almost had a heart attack. Those clothes. It was identical to the outfit she had put on in her disguise as the ugly girl. How could she have forgotten about that? For her own convenience, she had made 3 identical outfits in the same style and color so that she didn't have to bother choosing what to wear. Right now, she saw that someone had washed one of them and hung everything up in the backyard in broad daylight. Just like that. If Feng Sun or any of his fellows happened to walk in, they would definitely. Feng Wu was worried sick. Right at that moment, someone smashed the door open and rushed in like a gust of wind. Feng Wu thought her heart was going to explode when the door burst open. Thump, thump, thump. That was the sound of Feng Wu's heart. Had Feng Sun and the others discovered that she was the ugly girl? She recalled what Feng Sun mentioned earlier, about severing the tendons in her arms and legs and draining her blood. She'd wish she was dead. Feng Wu shuddered at the thought. Feng Wu. A shrill, tyrannical voice rang out behind Feng Wu. Feng Wu's heart began to beat normally when she heard the voice. She turned around and stared at Feng Lu coldly. She had to attract all of Feng Lu's attention so that the latter wouldn't notice that dress. However, before Feng Wu could say another word, Feng Lu glared at her and exclaimed, Feng Wu, I'm warning you. The crown prince is mine and he likes me. Stay away from him or you'll be in trouble. Jun Linyuan liked Feng Lu? Feng Wu felt like cracking up. If that was the case, Jun Linyuan wouldn't be Jun Linyuan anymore. Are you sneering? Feng Lu's eyes spat fire. I'm not. Feng Wu didn't forget her main objective now, which was to keep Feng Lu away from that dress and get rid of the woman ASAP. Staring at Feng Wu, Feng Lu asked, I only have one question for you. Which is? Feng Wu took a few steps as she spoke, stepping further and further away from the dress and pretending to marvel at some budding purple flowers in the courtyard. That way, when Feng Lu stared at her, she wouldn't be looking at the dress at the same time. Feng Sun was an excellent painter. Not only had he depicted the ugly girl accurately in that drawing, he had drawn her dress down to the very last detail. Feng Lu had no idea that upon closer examination, she could finish Feng Wu off for good. But all her attention was on Feng Wu now. Feng Lu's eyes tracked Feng Wu wherever she went. Seeing Feng Wu casually enjoy the flowers with her hands behind her back, Feng Lu burned with hatred. Why? Why did this good-for-nothing look so pleased with herself when she had no spiritual essence whatsoever? However, recalling the times when she had been set up by this useless Feng Wu, Feng Lu took a deep breath and stared at Feng Wu with unblinking eyes. I only have one question and I want an honest answer. Do you still like the crown prince? Feng Wu cast her a sidelong glance. Still? I've never liked Jun Linyuan. There's no still. So, Miss Feng the Sixth, please get lost. Feng Wu stole a glance at the dress hanging there. Feng Lu might be as good as blind, but not everyone else was. If Feng Sun and the others came back now, Feng Sun would be in a lot of trouble. Hearing that, Feng Lu looked exhilarated. Pointing at Feng Wu, she said, You said it yourself. I didn't make you. You admitted it. You don't like the crown prince. Chapter 140. Do you think she can intimidate me? Chapter 140. Do you think she can intimidate me? Fine, I said it. I said it with my own mouth. Happy? Feng Wu snapped. I don't care how sincere or not you are, but I took that seriously. If in the future... Feng Lu left in satisfaction after getting the answer she wanted. Feng Wu walked toward the clothes. All of a sudden, Feng Lu spun around and stared at Feng Wu again. Feng Wu's heart lurched. She was seriously considering the possibility of getting a heart attack. You said it. You don't like the crown prince. Feng Lu kept her gaze on Feng Wu. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu looked at her in resignation. She nodded as she pushed Feng Lu toward the door. Yes, I said that myself. I don't like Jun Linyuan. Satisfied? Feng Wu then pushed Feng Lu out of the yard, closed the door and bolted it, wasting no time in between. She then quickly ran toward where the clothes were hung up. She had to hurry up. They were evidence. However, as soon as she touched the dress, the door burst open again. What now? Feng Wu turned around angrily, only to see Feng Sun and the others walk in. Instantly, Feng Wu felt all the blood rush to her head and her mind went blank. She was as stiff as a statue. Shit. Feng Sun and the others had come back. She was going to be caught red-handed. However, thanks to her secret agent training in her previous life, Feng Wu could keep calm in the most impossible circumstances. After taking a deep breath, she saw that it wasn't a good time to stow the dress away on her. Hence, she casually pulled a shawl down from the drying rack and wrapped her dress in it. Despite how nervous she felt deep down, she didn't let it show. She was breathing normally and her hands were steady. She couldn't look any more level-headed. That way at least the all-important clothes were out of sight. What are you doing? Feng Sun ran up to her curiously. You turned around as soon as you saw me. Do I annoy you that much? Feng Wu wondered if the guy would turn around and leave if she said yes. Obviously the answer was no. Instead of leaving, Feng Sun would keep on asking why until she became dizzy. Feng Wu smiled mildly. I'm taking in the laundry. What do you think? Wait, why are you guys back so soon? You're done searching for her? Feng Sun snorted. The ugly girl was done breaking wind. We lost track of her. Feng Wu nodded. Of course. You had a hard time finding her when you had a lead. It's only going to get harder without one. You guys must be exhausted after a long day. Get some rest. I'm off. Feng Wu wanted to stay as far away as possible from this guy. However, Feng Sun stopped her by grabbing her shoulder. Feng Wu, what's going on? Why are you avoiding us? We saw Feng Lu storm off when we came back. Did she say nasty things to you? Or threatened you? Feng Wu said grumpily, do you think she can intimidate me? Feng Sun didn't think so. Feng Wu might be a good-for-nothing with no spiritual essence, but she was exceptionally smart. Plus, her imposing manner alone was enough to scare Feng Lu off. Well, I admit that Feng Lu doesn't scare you now, but you do realize that ups and downs go hand in hand. You'll stay this way forever while Feng Lu, although a mere level 5 spiritual master now, will advance in the future, and the only way is up for her. One day, she'll be able to annihilate you like she's crushing an ant. Chapter 141 The Flustered Feng Wu. Chapter 141 The Flustered Feng Wu. Feng Wu said in her head, I'll stay this way forever? Says who? She was already able to resume her cultivation now, and she had her master's divine blood of the phoenix. No one could predict how far she would go in the future. So, Feng Wu smiled at him. So, do you want to work for me as my personal chef? The Feng Manor will always welcome you and offer you food and shelter, said young Lord Feng with a smile. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. Feng Sun made another offer. Hey, don't roll your eyes. Is being my chef too petty a position for you? Fair enough. How about Boss Jun's personal chef then? Feng Sun was so confident in himself that he was sure Feng Wu would say yes. She liked Boss Jun, didn't she? It was so obvious. Feng Wu rolled her eyes again. In your dreams. But why? Don't tell me that you're still dreaming of somehow becoming the wife of the crown prince and the future queen of the empire? Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Now that's a real dream. No emperor has ever taken a good-for-nothing as a wife. Feng Wu's serious thought that if she were any less magnanimous, she would have exploded from what Feng Sun said. Am I not telling the truth? Feng Sun found her glare baffling. Feng Wu snorted. Why are you so sure that I'll stay this way? I'm telling you tomorrow, I'll be a level 1 spiritual master. Feng Sun broke into laughter at those words. Patting Feng Wu's slim shoulder, he said, Fine, fine. Don't be pissed, but you'll never be able to cultivate again in your life. Spiritual essence has left you forever. Feng Wu smirked. What will you do if I become a level 1 spiritual master tomorrow? When Feng Wu refined that pill, even old man Ba didn't know that what she was refining was the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill. Even if he did, he wouldn't know that she had used the juice of the immortal spiritual fruit. Hence, if she could resume her cultivation, they might not necessarily make the connection between her and that immortal spiritual fruit. If you really can do that, I'll give you whatever you want. Feng Sun patted his chest and made a promise. You promise? I promise. What is said can't be retracted. Feng Wu then turned to leave. But at that moment, Feng Sun reached out and offered to help. Let me take those for you. No, Feng Wu shouted. Feng Sun rubbed his ears. He thought that the girl's shrill cry had ripped his eardrums. Fine, don't scream. Are you keeping some secret in those clothes? Feng Sun eyed the clothes in Feng Wu's arms curiously with his clear, bright eyes. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Calm down. You must keep calm. Before she could think of an excuse, a door to one of the rooms opened. Miss Wu, Granny Zhao, her beautiful mother's chambermaid, saw the clothes Feng Wu was holding and asked, What are those? Feng Wu made up an excuse right away. They were blown off the drying rack and got dirt on them. I was going to take them back and wash them again. Granny Zhao came toward Feng Wu in a hurry and reached out. Miss Wu, go keep the guests company. I'll take the laundry. Miss Wu, let me wash them for you. Feng Wu could have given them to Granny Zhao, but if the granny unwrapped the shawl here, Feng Wu would be dead before she knew it. Hence Feng Wu declined with a smile. Granny Zhao, you're already so busy taking care of my mother, along with everything else. I knocked these clothes to the ground myself, of course I should wash them. Feng Wu had never felt this flustered. Chapter 142 Cultivation, here we go. Chapter 142 Cultivation, here we go. She could live with the fact that she had to keep an eye on Feng Sun and his people, but even Granny Zhao was somehow giving her a hard time now. Were there no decent people left in this world? Fearing that Granny Zhao would create more trouble, Feng Wu changed the subject right away. By the way, where's Mum? I haven't seen her. Miss Wu, have you forgotten? Madam needs to sleep for 2 hours every afternoon, Granny Zhao said with a smile. Since Miss wants to wash the clothes yourself, I'll leave you in peace. Granny Zhao, please don't let me keep you. Feng Wu backed out of the courtyard, still holding her dress. She then darted off. Tilting his head, Feng Sun watched her suspiciously from behind. Somehow he found Feng Wu's behavior today very strange, but couldn't put his finger on it. Feng Wu went back to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. Only then did she look at the clothes in her hand and heave a sigh of relief. After taking a few deep breaths, Feng Wu sat down on the bed, crossing her legs and resting her palms on her knees. Her face remained impassive. Once she had cleared her mind of all unnecessary thoughts, she closed her clear, bright eyes. Feng Wu turned her sight inward and inspected her dantian. She saw a place of desolation that reminded her of a dry, cracked land. Using the spiritual essence of the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, Feng Wu nourished the parched land. The cracks closed up as she worked her way through it. Time passed. Feng Wu was so absorbed in the process that she forgot all about the world outside. Her dantian was repaired in no time, but Feng Wu realized that spiritual essence was still rushing into her body. There was no better time than now to restart her cultivation. Right now, energy stirred in Feng Wu's mended dantian like a rippling pond. Formidable fire spiritual energy poured into Feng Wu and kept burning that water. Water and fire were naturally incompatible. But because spiritual essence was working as an intermediary here, the fire spiritual energy heated up her dantian, gradually creating a golden liquid. Feng Wu's dantian was like a fine porcelain bottle now. It was tiny, as thin as a pinky. Drip, drip. The golden liquid drizzled down so clearly that Feng Wu could hear the sound. Because of the size of her dantian, it was soon filled to the brim, and the golden liquid spilled over. Just then there was a rumble. Her pinky-sized dantian shook violently. The golden liquid turned into a stream which flowed through all the energy channels in Feng Wu's body like a soaring dragon. When it reached the divine blood of the phoenix resting between her eyebrows, the golden liquid instantly looked much purer. The stream grew shorter as it flowed through her body. On the other hand, Feng Wu's internal energy channels began to glow with a faint golden light. The golden liquid vanished after completing its circuit, for it had been absorbed by Feng Wu's body. Her pinky-sized dantian had grown a little bigger. Feng Wu smiled a little. As expected, she wasn't a mere level 1 spiritual master. While her dantian was still undergoing its transformation, Feng Wu had realized that she had already become a level 2 spiritual master. However, the fire spiritual energy was still creating golden liquid in that pool in her dantian. That was to say, Feng Wu might advance beyond a level 2 spiritual master at this point in time. The golden liquid kept gathering in her dantian, which filled up and rose up. With Feng Wu's refinement, another golden dragon was formed, which flowed through her energy channels again. Chapter 143 Her Beautiful Master. Chapter 143 Her Beautiful Master. Rumble. Feng Wu's tiny dantian expanded again. Needless to say, Feng Wu was a level 3 spiritual master now. The spiritual master stage consisted of 9 levels in total, and at her current rate of progress, Feng Wu smiled at that thought. Breathing out a stream of turbid energy through her nose, Feng Wu slowly opened her eyes. Starting from 0, she had reached level 3 all at once, which made quite a lot of noise. Linyuan and the others were right next door and had to have noticed something. She had to make up some very good excuse to explain herself now. However, at the thought of Linyuan's knowing eyes, Feng Wu was at a loss over what to say. She could only hope that they wouldn't make the connection between her and the ugly girl. Wait, now that she had made some progress, would her master wake up? As soon as she opened her eyes, she shifted a little and entered her ring in her spiritual form. She hurried close and looked at her beautiful master expectantly. Would he wake up now that she had resumed her cultivation? In the spacious room, her immortal-like beautiful master lay there with his wide white sleeves, which reminded her of clouds in the sky, hanging down from the bed. On that godlike face, which was as smooth as jade, his black eyes remained closed. His mouth didn't betray any emotion, which gave him a detached and lofty look. He was as stunning, handsome, and matchless as ever, but he remained asleep. She felt so defeated. Before she knew it, Feng Wu had pressed her hand to her chest. Her face drained of all color at the throbbing pain in her heart, and she almost collapsed. Master! Feng Wu went down on one knee and touched her beautiful master's impeccable face with slim, trembling fingers. His skin was ice cold under her fingertips. Feng Wu took a deep breath, but still couldn't fight back the tears that welled up in her eyes. Seeing her master's lifeless face and realizing that he might never wake up from this coma, Feng Wu shut her eyes. She was overwhelmed with remorse, self-accusations, and fond memories. A tumult of emotions washed over her like a tidal wave, and the pain was almost too much for her to handle. Master, don't shut me out like this. I'm your little Wu. Tears rolled down Feng Wu's cheeks, then fell on her master's robe. Suddenly she heard a rustle. It startled the grief-stricken Feng Wu. Her eyes widened as she stared at her master's shoulder. A colorful phoenix stuck its head out. Little Phoenix! Feng Wu cried out in surprise, her fingers trembling. Little Phoenix! Feng Wu had no idea where her master had found the bird. She could still remember the warm, impeccable smile on her master's face as he looked at her affectionately. This little phoenix is a descendant of the divine bird of ancient times, and is the only one of its kind on this continent. Shall I make it your mount one day? An ancient divine bird? That sounded awesome. Little Feng Wu nodded earnestly in reply. Hence, her master began to raise the colorful phoenix, tailoring it to Feng Wu's needs. In less than a year, the dull, lackluster little bird grew 7 beautiful tail feathers, and the ugly duckling turned into a pretty phoenix, not to mention improved so much in capability that it surpassed Feng Wu, which had been quite a hard blow to her. However, when her beautiful master went into a coma when Feng Wu was 8, the phoenix disappeared with him. Feng Wu had thought that the bird had left, but she now realized that it had gone into a coma together with her master. Chapter 144. How to Save My Master. Chapter 144. How to Save My Master. The bird flew around Feng Wu while staring at her in a proud and vexed manner. It then snorted and rested on her master's shoulder again, turning its back on Feng Wu. Little Phoenix, are you not going to talk to me anymore? Because the bird was a shared secret between Feng Wu and her master, Feng Wu was very glad to see it again. Master died because of you. I'm not talking to you. Resting its wings on its waist, little Phoenix glared at Feng Wu. Those words were like a sharp blade stabbing into Feng Wu's heart. It was almost too painful for her to breathe. She lowered her gaze and trembled from head to toe. Feng Wu clenched her fists and looked at little Phoenix earnestly with her bright, black eyes. Indeed, my master fell into a coma because of me, but I swear that I'll wake him up. You can't possibly do that. Little Phoenix glowered at Feng Wu. Do you have any idea how difficult that is? First of all, you'll have to. Feng Wu stared at little Phoenix, waiting for it to finish what it was going to say. However, little Phoenix waved its wings impatiently. Forget it. What's the point? You'll never be able to do it. So you know how to wake my master up, don't you? You know. Who told you? My master? I don't care where you learned it, just tell me. Rushing to its side, Feng Wu picked little Phoenix up with both hands and raised it over her head. With a stern look on its face, little Phoenix said, What level are you now? Feng Wu said happily. I'm a level 3 spiritual master already. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes. You make it sound like a level 3 spiritual master is something to brag about. With your petty cultivation level, I might as well be signing your death warrant if I tell you now. Although I don't like you anymore. Master will tell me off if you're dead. I won't do anything reckless, Feng Wu promised, raising both hands in the air. Heh, Little Phoenix didn't buy it. Feng Wu knew that despite its childish-sounding tone, the bird was very stubborn. If it chose to, it could make sure to never say a word, no matter how Feng Wu cajoled and threatened. At that thought, Feng Wu had no choice but to ask, so what level do I have to reach before you can tell me? Little Phoenix said without hesitation. Spiritual Elder. Feng Wu cried out, make it Spiritual Grandmaster. I'm only a level 3 spiritual master now, and I'll have to reach level 9 before I can break through to the spiritual grandmaster stage. It'll be really tough. Little Phoenix snorted haughtily. So be it. Spiritual grandmaster then. Feng Wu said, it's a deal. You'll tell me how to save my master when I become a spiritual grandmaster. There's no going back on your word. Little Phoenix cast a disgruntled look at Feng Wu. You're getting struck by a thunderbolt even as we speak. Are you sure you still want to hang around here? A thunderbolt? What the heck? Feng Wu was ready to leave when Little Phoenix reminded her arrogantly, don't forget to bring your concealing jade. She then recalled her old habit. In order to keep her cultivation level a secret, she would usually walk around with the concealing jade her master gave her, so that she could pose as a weakling and trick her opponents who let their guard down. Many fell for it. Feng Wu darted an appreciative look at Little Phoenix. Despite its reluctance to talk to her, the bird did care about her after all. After confirming it repeatedly with Little Phoenix, Feng Wu left the ring and went back to her own body. Her bright, clear eyes snapped open. Feng Wu immediately realized that something wasn't right. What happened? She was surrounded by darkness and couldn't even make out her own fingers. Chapter 145. I'm not going to the Imperial capital. Chapter 145. I'm not going to the Imperial capital. She was covered in layer upon layer of debris, which was packed tightly around her without letting any light in. It felt as if she had been buried alive. Meanwhile, she could hear her beautiful mother's anxious wails. Xiaowu, are you all right? Feng Lu held onto the beautiful lady and feigned a caring tone. Auntie, things like this happen. The thunderbolt came out of the blue and of all the rooms, it just happened to hit Feng Wu's. Collapsed right away. Even if the thunderbolt didn't kill her, the bricks would surely have crushed her to death. Crying won't change anything. She might be trying to console Feng Wu's mother, if she could hide the satisfaction in her tone. Frightened, the beautiful lady burst into tears. With a sudden burst of energy, she shoved Feng Lu to the side and stumbled toward the pile of ruins. She tripped halfway there, but she immediately scrambled to her feet and went on running. Feng Wu couldn't bring herself to see her mother in such a distraught state. She rose to her feet right away. Crumble. Broken bricks and tiles rolled down the pile as she stood up. Everyone turned their eyes in her direction at the noise. Their eyes widened as they saw a figure walk out of the debris. Her face was stunning. Her expression was undisturbed. The look in her eyes was as calm as ever. Xiaowu, the beautiful lady, was worried sick. Holding onto Feng Wu with her slender fingers, she couldn't stop trembling. Xiaowu, what are we going to do? Your room was destroyed by lightning. Mum, I'm fine. Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that her mother's face was smudged with dirt, she gently wiped her face clean. After rubbing the beautiful lady's shoulders softly to calm her down, Feng Wu turned her gaze on Feng Lu. Feng Lu's stomach lurched when their eyes met. What was going on? Why did she feel that Feng Wu's stare was even more piercing and intimidating than usual? When Feng Wu turned her dark eyes her way, Feng Lu felt as if a cold, sharp blade had stabbed her in the heart. Why are you still standing? Why aren't you dead? Feng Lu couldn't understand why this had happened. Wasn't Feng Wu useless? How come there wasn't a scratch on her after being hit by a thunderbolt first, followed by a house collapsing on top of her? That didn't make sense. Crossing her arms in front of her, Feng Wu gave Feng Lu a half-smile. My dear cousin, it sounds to me that you wished I was dead. Feng Lu blanched. Before she could say another word, Feng Yiran came in with a frown and said impatiently, Are you done packing? We're leaving in 2 hours. Leaving? Where to? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and stared at Feng Yiran. Feng Yiran also recognized the change in Feng Wu's gaze. However, he was too concerned with their departure to ponder it. He replied in a cold voice, To the Imperial capital, of course. Who's going? Feng Wu squinted at him. Feng Lu gloated. What's going on with you tonight? Don't you know that the Crown Prince has left? Jun Linyuan and the others are gone? Feng Wu still hadn't figured out what excuse to give those people, and was greatly relieved to hear the news. That's right. They left before daybreak, and His Royal Highness took the time to talk to me before he left. Why didn't he say anything to you? Chapter 146 To our boss June, that girl is. Chapter 146 To our boss June, that girl is. It didn't take a genius to see that Feng Lu was showing off. That only settled Feng Wu's mind further. Go pack. You only have 2 hours. We're setting out as soon as the day breaks, Feng Lu prompted. Feng Wu snorted. I'm perfectly happy living here in northern border city. Why should I go with you? I'm staying right here. Her beautiful mother suddenly took her hand with teary, pleading eyes. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, which was the last thing Feng Wu wanted to see in this world. Feng Wu's heart sank and something felt very wrong. Before she could ask, Ha 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 ha, Feng Lu guffawed. Feng Wu, haven't you realized that your brother isn't here? Her brother? Only then did Feng Wu realize that she hadn't seen Feng Xiaoqi anywhere. With his restless temperament, he would have been the first to run out at something as big as a collapsed house. Wait. Feng Wu took her mother's hands and looked into her beautiful eyes. Mom. The beautiful lady's eyes swam with tears and she started crying before she could speak. Ha ha ha, Feng Lu went on laughing. Jun Linyuan took your brother. He took Feng Xiaoqi to the Imperial capital. Ha ha ha. Feng Wu's heart sank. Jun Linyuan took Feng Xiaoqi. Why? Thinking back to Jun Linyuan's indecipherable expression and his knowing look, Feng Wu was utterly frustrated. What did the guy want? Feng Lu darted Feng Wu a distasteful glance. Anyway, we're leaving in 2 hours. Brother and I will tie you up and escort you to the Imperial capital even if you don't want to. Suit yourself. At the thought of having the entire Feng clan to back her up once they were back in the Imperial capital, and that she would be able to make Feng Wu do anything, turn her into a maid or a slave, Feng Lu made a fist in satisfaction, then left the courtyard, laughing all the way. Feng Wu furrowed her fine eyebrows. Her beautiful mother looked around to make sure that Feng Lu was really gone. She then took a letter out of her sleeve and stuffed it into Feng Wu's hands. Lowering her voice, she said gingerly to Feng Wu, I hid it well. No one took it away. Feng Wu rubbed her beautiful mother's glossy black hair affectionately, then unfolded the letter. It was from Feng Sun. Feng Sun's letter was in his usual style and rambled on. However, it came with its merits. Feng Sun told her everything, including things that maybe he shouldn't have. We were going to stay for a while in northern border city, but we received an urgent message and had to leave in the middle of the night. Did I tell you? We came here to northern border city this time to search for the immortal spiritual fruit because the life of a very pretty and very lovely girl depends on it. A pretty and lovely girl? Who was that? Feng Wu frowned. She still couldn't figure out who it was after racking her brain. Ha ha ha. I bet you're dying to find out who that girl is, aren't you? Our boss June was willing to travel thousands of miles from the Imperial capital for her. What do you think she is to him? Are you jealous? Ha ha ha. Don't even try to compare yourself with her. If the place you take up in boss June's heart is about the size of a sesame seed, she takes up his entire mind. She's the only girl that boss June treats gently. Feel jealous all you want, but you'll never be her match. Chapter 147 A few drops of blood is all your brother will lose every day. Chapter 147 A few drops of blood is all your brother will lose every day. Feng Wu was speechless. So what if that girl was the only one June Linyuan treated with gentleness? She jealous? Don't make her laugh. Ha ha ha. Right, I almost forgot to tell you something. We were very lucky yesterday. Because your brother accidentally cut his finger, and Boss June saw right away that your brother was someone with an ultimate spiritual body. Do you know what that means? It means that your brother is the key to saving that girl. On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. The ultimate spiritual body was a very rare and very precious quality, so much so that on the entire continent only a handful of people had it. Such a quality enabled one to cultivate automatically as long as there was spiritual essence around, which was why it made others so envious. Feng Xiaoqi had started off as someone with a semi-ultimate spiritual body. It was exceptional, but not amazingly so. Despite all the rumors which might arise, or what others would think of her, Feng Wu delayed Feng Xiaoqi's cultivation for 5 years. With her matchless medical skills, Feng Wu had been nourishing Feng Xiaoqi continuously for the past 5 years. Finally, she turned his semi-ultimate spiritual body into a real one. And what was June Linyuan going to do to Feng Xiaoqi now? He was going to cut the boy open for his blood. If they somehow destroyed Feng Xiaoqi's gifts, Feng Wu swore that she would kill them all. Other people said that because Feng Wu was useless, she was so jealous of Feng Xiaoqi that she had stopped him from cultivating in order to make him as useless as she was. But in fact, no one knew how much Feng Wu had invested in her brother. Since you were sleeping, we didn't want to wake you up. We took your brother with us back to the Imperial capital. Feng Wu smirked. They didn't want to wake her up? They had decided to act first and report afterward because they knew she wouldn't allow it. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu had guessed part of the truth. Feng Sun indeed found Feng Wu a little intimidating. Don't worry. A few drops of blood is all your brother will lose every day. He'll live. Plus, Boss June will owe him a very big favor. That'll be such a great honor for you all. Aren't you glad for your brother? Ha ha ha. Enough with the ha-has, already. If Feng Sun was here, Feng Wu would so smash an iron pan on his head. A few drops of blood every day? What kind of charlatan had come up with such a lousy idea? Feng Wu felt like punching someone. Xiao Wu. Her beautiful mother was eyeing her earnestly. Feng Wu said to Granny Zhao by her mother's side, "Please pack my mum's things. We're leaving for the Imperial capital ASAP." Granny Zhao nodded. Wait, where's Choling? It finally occurred to Feng Wu that she hadn't seen her chambermaid Choling anywhere. Ever since Frozen Forest, Feng Wu's mind had been all over the place. She had devoted all her energy toward evading Feng Sun, and the others that she had forgotten about Choling. Granny Zhao said, Miss Feng Lu locked Choling up in the woodshed and wouldn't let us give Choling any food. She said she'd starved Choling for 3 days. Feng Wu glared at her. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Granny Zhao gave her a bitter smile. Miss, you've been so busy these days that I never got around to tell you. Plus, with His Royal Highness here. Rest assured, Mississippi. I've been sneaking food into Choling. She wouldn't have starved. Feng Wu knew that Granny Zhao had kept it from her for her own good. The old maid didn't want Feng Wu to start another row with Feng Lu over Choling again. I'll get her out. Feng Wu went to the woodshed in a hurry. Choling was fast asleep when Feng Wu entered. She heaved a sigh when she saw that there wasn't a scratch on Choling's face and that she didn't look emaciated. Moonlight poured in like water through the window. She could make out Choling's face, which still looked troubled in sleep. Chapter 148, You're the one Feng Sun made such a fuss about. Chapter 148. You're the one Feng Sun made such a fuss about. Choling's face was covered in sweat and she looked panic-stricken. Sitting down on the bed, Feng Wu patted her gently on the shoulder. Choling, wake up. Miss Wu. Choling cried out and bolted up from the bed, her eyes still closed. Bad dream? Feng Wu asked guiltily. Choling opened her eyes at Feng Wu's voice and was shocked when she saw the latter. She sat there in a trance-like state. Am I still dreaming? It seems like I saw my mistress come back. Tears welled up in Choling's eyes as she spoke. Feng Wu chortled. Silly girl. You're not in a dream. Your mistress is really back. Miss Wu. Miss Wu, is that really you? You're not dead. You're back. Sob, overwhelmed with dread, distress, and anxiety. Qiuling threw herself into Feng Wu's arms, tears rolling down her cheeks. Sob, Miss Wu, I saw that eagle take you and I thought I would never see you again. Qiuling had always been a steady girl, and Feng Wu never expected to one day see her cry like this, which made her feel all the more guilty. She then briefly told Qiuling about what had happened in the past few days. Oh my God! Covering her mouth with both hands, Qiuling's eyes popped out. Miss Yu, you stole that immortal spiritual fruit from the crown prince after that eagle snatched you. Feng Wu nodded. Yup. And you've refined the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill with that fruit, and you can resume your cultivation. Feng Wu nodded again. Yup. Oh God, oh God, oh God. There is divine justice after all. Sob, burying her face in her palms, Qiuling wept with joy. Tears rolled down her cheeks like broken beads. This is great. This is the greatest news. Qiuling had served Feng Wu since they were little. She had been there when Feng Wu grew into a genius girl as well as when Feng Wu was crippled and fell out of favor. On hearing the news that Feng Wu was able to cultivate again, Qiuling was so excited that she almost jumped to her feet. Feng Wu enjoined in a serious tone. Feng Sun and his people have no idea that I was the ugly girl. You were there with me in Yunlai Tower, so make sure you don't give the game away. I won't. Qiuling made a fist. Go pack our stuff. We're leaving for the Imperial capital in less than 2 hours. Feng Wu heaved a sigh. Going to the Imperial capital now wasn't ideal for Feng Wu. Her plan was to achieve some significant gains in her cultivation here in northern border city before going to the Imperial capital. However, now that her little brother had been taken, Feng Wu had no choice but to follow. In the last bit of time she had left, Feng Wu went to see Old Man Ba. Old Man Ba welcomed Feng Wu with his intense gaze. He looked Feng Wu up and down, eager for some gossip. Feng Wu sat down in a familiar manner, poured some tea for herself and casually sipped it, completely unaffected by the old man's probing gaze. In the end, Old Man Ba was the first to give in. Leaning toward Feng Wu, he said, Hey little one. What? Feng Wu said grumpily. You're the person Feng Sun made such a fuss about, aren't you? Feng Wu was baffled. Master Ba, aren't you supposed to be a medicine maniac? I didn't know you were interested in such worldly affairs. Old Man Ba gave Feng Wu a sidelong glance and said haughtily, I'm only asking because you're involved. I wouldn't give a damn if it was anyone else. Old people indeed behaved like kids. Feng Wu shook her head. I'm not the one. Old Man Ba didn't buy it. Liar. You were the one in my refinery and only you knew about that passageway. Who else could it be? Chapter 149. I can't cultivate? Says who? Chapter 149. I can't cultivate? Says who? Feng Wu gave Old Man Ba a half-smile. Tell me this. Who was the person that welcomed Jun Linyuan into the refinery and tried to introduce me to them? You wouldn't let them leave before that happened. Cough, cough. Old Man Ba almost choked on his own spit. He waved his hands in a flurry. Fine, forget what I asked. Young lady, you just always have to win, don't you? Now what do you want from me this time? I'm going to the Imperial capital. We're leaving in an hour, said Feng Wu earnestly. Why the rush? Old Man Ba asked. What happened? Is someone threatening you? Tell me. I'll take care of it for you. Yes. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu snorted. Cough, cough. Old Man Ba almost choked on his own spit again. Had it been anyone else, his status might be enough to back Feng Wu up. But this was Jun Linyuan. Did he find out what you did? Feng Wu said grumpily. Do you think I'd be sitting here in one piece if he had? He discovered Xiaoqi's ultimate spiritual body, and took my brother back to the Imperial capital to use his blood to save someone. I'm worried that they'll mess things up and somehow hurt Xiaoqi's ultimate spiritual body, which will be a very big problem. So, I'll be away from northern border city for some time, and I'll leave everything here in your hands. Old Man Ba nodded. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Wait here a moment. After that, Old Man Ba went inside in a hurry, and before long, he came back and handed Feng Wu 2 letters. For Ba Jianming's eyes only? Feng Wu checked the first envelope. Is this your son? My grandson. Feng Wu darted a look at Old Man Ba with a half-smile and said teasingly, "You don't like your son very much, do you?" Old Man Ba glowered at Feng Wu. "How did you figure that out?" "It's all in the name. Ba Jianming, that sounds like Ba Jianmen. To have a wastrel for a father." "You called your son a wastrel, didn't you?" Old Man Ba was speechless. If Feng Wu hadn't pointed it out, he would never have known how lousy the name he had given his grandson was. The corner of his mouth twitched a little and he waved his hands. "Jianming is, well, he's angry with me because of his father. The last time I heard from him, he was in Wanping Town, which is on your way to the Imperial capital. I'd like you to take something to him for me." Feng Wu nodded, then examined the second envelope. "Yan Shuren? The principal of Imperial College?" Old Man Ba nodded. "We go a long way back. Take this letter to him. Remember, give it to him in person." Feng Wu asked tentatively, "Must I give it to him myself?" "Of course. You have to deliver it, not anyone else. Understand?" Old Man Ba stressed. Feng Wu nodded. "Old man, you're not asking your friend, the principal, to keep an eye on me, are you?" That was spot on. Old Man Ba cast a stern look at Feng Wu, then said in a haughty tone, "Little one, you think too highly of yourself. Do I look like that kind of person to you?" "But you are," said Feng Wu matter-of-factly. Old Man Ba darted another look at Feng Wu and mumbled, "What a pity that you can never cultivate again. Otherwise, I would ask Old Yen to teach you himself. Such a pity." Feng Wu couldn't bring herself to lie to Old Man Ba. Putting away the concealing jade, Feng Wu grinned. "I can't cultivate? Says who?" Chapter 150. I got struck by thunder, I suppose. Chapter 150. I got struck by thunder, I suppose. Wait a minute. Old Man Ba's eyes lit up and he cried out in surprise. Level 3 Spiritual Master? When did you achieve that? A Level 3 Spiritual Master ranks at the bottom of all cultivators, but it's still proof that you can cultivate now. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. Yes, at least I can cultivate now. That's great. Old Man Ba was over the moon. Surprise us with your first success, won't you? A lot of people are waiting to laugh at you. I bet they don't know you can cultivate yet. Feng Wu put the concealing jade back on and smiled. I think I'll keep it from them for the time being. That's very wise of you. After all, you're still quite weak and you don't have an advanced cultivator to protect you. You must be extra careful from now on. What do you think they'll do to you if they find out that you can cultivate again? Old Man Ba said anxiously. Luckily, you have my letter for Old Yen. Go to him and ask for his protection as soon as you get to the Imperial capital. He won't cast you aside. As for your Feng clan, well, I won't expect anything from them if I were you. Count yourself lucky if they don't dupe you, let alone protect you. Feng Wu took Old Man Ba's words to heart. The principal of Imperial College held a very prestigious status in the Junwu Empire. Feng Wu had only met the man once, even when she had still been the genius girl. Grandpa Ba, Feng Wu began to speak. She knew that the old man had found her a very powerful patron. Old Man Ba found sentimental moments like these very icky. Waving his hand, he said impatiently, I would never have bothered to do such a thing for you if it wasn't for Jun Linyuan's pursuit. Make sure no one finds out. You're dead if Jun Linyuan discovers that you did it. Understand? Yes, of course. I will. Feng Wu nodded right away. She had thought about leaving things to chance and didn't think it would be a big deal if Jun Linyuan found out what she had done. But she had stopped thinking that way after Feng Sun told her that Jun Linyuan had traveled all the way out here to find the medicine to save the girl he cared the most for in this world. If Jun Linyuan found out that Feng Wu was the thief who had stolen his immortal spiritual fruit, she would lose a lot more than a few drops of blood. The guy would probably simply carve her heart out. Feng Wu shuddered at the thought. Old Man Ba came back to his senses at that moment and looked suspiciously at Feng Wu. Speaking of which, little one, why is it that you can cultivate again? Feng Wu was quick to react and came up with a ready answer. I have no idea. Maybe it was because of that thunderbolt yesterday. I was struck, then got my abilities back. Old Man Ba rolled his eyes at her. You're lying your ass off, little thing. I can tell right away that it was because of that immortal spiritual fruit. Why did you even ask then? Feng Wu glowered at Old Man Ba. The old man had guessed it all along. He had only asked to make sure that Feng Wu already had an excuse ready, so that June Linyuan wouldn't catch her off guard. Even with everything Old Man Ba had gone through, he still found June Linyuan very intimidating. "All right, I'm off. They're all waiting for me." Feng Wu waved her right hand as she spoke. Old Man Ba shook his head grumpily. What a naughty kid. However, as Feng Wu walked away, Old Man Ba suddenly burst into laughter. With the girl in the Imperial capital, the city wouldn't stay quiet for much longer. Feng Wu got back to the Feng manor just in time. Feng Lu was yelling at the servants when Feng Wu arrived. Seeing her cousin, Feng Lu snorted. "Hurry up. Everyone is ready and we're all waiting for you. You'll have to answer to me if we can't catch up with His Royal Highness." Chapter 151 The Imperial Capital is a City of Trouble. Chapter 151 The Imperial Capital is a City of Trouble. Had it not been for the fact that her brother had been cultivating in the small hours and required absolute quiet, Feng Lu would have prompted him to set out together with June Linyuan. Feng Wu didn't take many people with her this time. The only servant she had was Soaring, her chambermaid. And the beautiful lady only took her own chambermaid, Granny Zhao. Other than the two maids, there was also Uncle Chiu, the steward/guard that had been with Feng Wu for a very long time. Feng Wu was used to keeping all her important belongings in the ring, and she had little to pack. However, her beautiful mother was taking out case after case of clothes, which made Feng Wu stare with an open mouth. There are so many of them. Seeing that Feng Wu was looking in their direction, Granny Zhao said in a hurry, as if she had just found her savior, "Madam wants to take all her clothes and ornaments back to the Imperial capital. But how are we going to fit all these cases?" There were at least over a dozen eaglewood chests. Biting her lower lip, the beautiful lady was all puppy-eyed and pitiful. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving behind one single piece of clothing. "I made them myself." Her glistening eyes were as clear and innocent as a fawn's, waking up all of Feng Wu's motherly instincts. Feng Wu gave in right away. All right. We'll take them all. Everything." "Yes." The beautiful lady smiled through her tears and her face was as radiant as the morning sun. The corner of Granny Zhao's mouth twitched a little and she didn't know what to say. No one took so many chests when traveling, for it was simply too inconvenient. She had never met another daughter that doted on their mother like Miss Wu here did. Feng Lu and Feng Iran exchanged looks as the big chests were taken out of the rooms. It seemed that Feng Wu had accumulated quite some wealth during her 5 years living here in northern border city. Once they were back in the Imperial capital. Ha. Feng Lu would never have guessed that the chests contained nothing of real value, but only the beautiful lady's clothes. After Feng Lu's incessant nagging, everyone finally got into their carriages and were ready to depart. Feng Iran and Feng Lu's carriage went first, followed by their guards. Feng Wu and the others from the old manor were at the rear of the procession. That was to say, Feng Iran's men were only responsible for the safety of the brother and sister. They wouldn't give a damn if anything happened to Feng Wu and the others. Feng Wu thought about having a carriage to herself, so that it would be more convenient for her to cultivate on the way. But now she changed her mind. "I'll share a carriage with Mum. Soaring, you take the one behind with Granny Zhao," Feng Wu instructed. The team from the Feng clan was soon on its way. The carriage Feng Wu took was a special one she had customized for her mother. Because it was shockproof, it was very comfortable to sit in, and one wouldn't be jolted or get tossed about like in ordinary carriages. Plus, there were a lot of hidden gadgets inside the carriage. Feng Wu put down a tray table from the wall and laid out some food and water on it, then fetched some embroidery work for her mother. She smiled and said in a cajoling voice, "I'm going to be busy with my cultivation from now on and I won't have much time to keep you company. Mom, do you think you can look after yourself?" Despite her childlike level of intelligence, the beautiful lady knew perfectly well that cultivation was something of great importance. She nodded affirmatively. "Xiao Wu is awesome." "Yes, Xiao Wu is going to get super awesome and I'll be able to protect you." Feng Wu caressed her mother's hair. Her other hand made a fist under her long sleeve. The Imperial capital was a city of trouble. There. Chapter 152 She had to be strong. Chapter 152. She had to be strong. Those who coveted her brother's ultimate spiritual body were there. And those who drooled over her mother's beauty. And those who had destroyed her true phoenix blood. And those who had driven her master into a coma. She had to be strong. That was her only option. Feng Wu took a deep breath, then sat down with her legs crossed. With the sway of the carriage, she was soon absorbed in her cultivation. She reached level 3 yesterday, and was curious to see if she could level up yet again today. As she inhaled, the spiritual energy in the surrounding air rushed toward her. Between her eyebrows, the drop of divine blood of the phoenix from her master glowed with a faint red light. 3 concentric circles of light appeared around the divine blood of the phoenix, resembling the growth rings of a tree. The abundant spiritual energy surrounded Feng Wu, seeping into her body through all her orifices. Clashing against the water in Feng Wu's dantian, the spiritual energy of fire flickered like streaks of lightning. As the 2 elements collided, the golden liquid gradually dribbled into Feng Wu's dantian. Drip, drip, drip. Feng Wu focused all her attention on the formation of the golden liquid, for she knew perfectly well that only when her dantian was filled with it could she move on to the next level. There was still a long way to go and she had only just started. The liquefaction into this golden liquid was a long and dull process. Moreover, it was painful and torturous. Each drop of the golden liquid was the result of a collision between fire and water, and each collision drove a sharp pain through Feng Wu like a stabbing dagger. Feng Wu let nothing show on her face, apart from the sweat that rolled down her cheeks. The level of the golden liquid rose in her dantian, filling it up to a quarter, half, 3/4. Feng Wu's clothes were soaked and she looked like she had been thrown into the water. At the same time in the front carriage, Feng Lu beckoned at Feng Yiran, who was riding a horse. Feng Yiran frowned but still went up to her. Before he could ask, Feng Lu said, "Brother, I need to talk to you right now. It's important." "What is it?" Feng Yiran was still frowning. "It's about Feng Wu." Feng Lu lowered her voice. Feng Yiran gave it some thought before dismounting from his horse and getting into the carriage. Cut to the chase. It was inappropriate for a brother to stay in a carriage alone with his sister. "Brother," wrapping her arms around her knees, Feng Lu looked up at Feng Yiran, her eyes twinkling. "Do you think it's a good idea to have Feng Wu back in the Imperial capital? What do you have in mind?" Feng Yiran answered with a question. Feng Lu brought up what had been on her mind this entire time. "Brother, I think bringing Feng Wu back alive will only do us harm. Do you think she'll stop competing with you over the position of future clan chief?" Before Feng Yiran could reply, Feng Lu smirked. "Brother, let me remind you. Feng Wu might be useless now, but she still has a very formidable weapon, her face." Feng Lu went on twisting the knife. "Young Lord Feng seemed to like her face a lot. You saw it yourself. He was all over her and followed her everywhere. If she becomes his concubine and works her charm in bed, what do you think she can talk him into?" Chapter 153 Deserted. Chapter 153 Deserted. Feng Sun wasn't without friends. The guy was backed by Jun Linyuan, the crown prince. Feng Yiran recalled what happened in the Feng manor previously, and had to admit that his younger sister here did have a point. Feng Lu watched him closely. Seeing the frown on his face, she knew that Feng Yiran was wavering. Hence, she clenched her fists and grabbed the opportunity. "Brother, do you think your relationship with Feng Wu will somehow be mended one day?" Feng Yiran shook his head without hesitation. In order to compete for the position of future clan chief, Feng Yiran had once done something to betray both Feng Wu and the entire Feng clan. There was no fixing his relationship with Feng Wu, for she would kill him if she ever found out what he had done. Feng Lu went on driving the wedge between Feng Yiran and Feng Wu. "And there's more, brother. You have to admit that many influential people have interesting notions about Feng Wu's pretty mother. If they were cornered somehow, what do you think they'll do?" Feng Yiran's frown grew bigger. "I can see that now." An exhilarated look flickered in Feng Lu's eyes. "So how about we do it now?" She gestured with her hand, drawing her fingers across her neck. Feng Yiran was still frowning. "Alu, have you forgotten what I taught you?" I haven't. You told me not to do it myself but to let others do it for me, right? I remember that. Feng Lu lowered her voice. On our way here, didn't we run into a pack of obsidian wolves? Feng Lu whispered something in Feng Iran's ear, then looked at him eagerly. Brother, what do you think? It'll be an accident no one could have anticipated. Even if young Lord Feng wants to take revenge afterwards, he'll have to vent his rage on those obsidian wolves, wouldn't he? Feng Iran gave Feng Lu a look. I see you've learned a few things. That's because I have a good teacher. Feng Lu raised her chin proudly. Good. I'll leave it to you then. A cold light flickered in Feng Iran's eyes. He had made plans to get rid of Feng Wu before they reached the Imperial capital. Since Feng Lu had offered to shoulder the task herself, Feng Iran was more than willing to hand over that burden. Little did Feng Lu know that she had just been used as a pawn. Accepting the task in excitement, she shot a meaningful glance at Kaiyue, her maid. A plot against Feng Wu took shape. Feng Lu didn't carry it out right away, for it required the perfect timing and favorable geographical conditions. They had been traveling for over a week when a little before dark one day, Feng Lu finally exploded. Jumping out of her carriage, she rushed to the rear of the team on horseback and whipped the side of Feng Wu's carriage hard. Smack! The carriage swayed violently and almost tipped over. The beautiful lady was hungry. She was about to wake Feng Wu up, but the noise frightened her. Feng Lu's angry voice came from outside. Why are you people so slow? Don't you know we're in a rush? Feng Wu was cultivating and had closed all her 5 senses to the outside world. Hence, she heard none of what Feng Lu said. Intimidated, her mother widened her eyes with no idea how to react. Feng Lu then whipped Uncle Chiu, who was driving the carriage. She said with a smirk on her face, "Drive as slow as you want then. We're going at our own speed." After that, Feng Lu put away the whip and galloped back on her horse. A moment later, the beautiful lady heard the sound of thundering hooves in the distance. Uncle Chiu panicked when he saw those traveling in the front speed off. He waved and cried out, "Hey! Wait for us! Wait!" However, they acted as if they didn't hear him at all and were soon out of sight. Uncle Chiu looked frightened. We've already entered Death Valley. What are we gonna do now? Death Valley after dark is. Chapter 154 Miss Wu can cultivate now. Chapter 154. Miss Wu can cultivate now. Uncle Chiu looked frightened. We've entered Death Valley already. What are we gonna do now? Death Valley after dark is. Uncle Chiu wasn't too capable a cultivator. He had followed Feng Wu all the way to northern border city, and had stayed a level 7 spiritual master ever since. As for Qiuling, she was even weaker. As a mere level 1 spiritual master, she could do little to help. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Feng Wu felt a disturbance in her mind, and there was a non-stop buzzing sound in her ears. She smiled a little. Finally, she was a level 4 spiritual master. She had guessed right. Her cultivation the second time round not only enabled her to strengthen her skills, it was also surprisingly efficient. In less than 10 days she had leveled up 4 times. Feng Wu felt that there was still room for more progress. As a result, she didn't emerge from her oblivious state, but remained fully absorbed in her cultivation. Uncle Chiu, what are we gonna do now? Qiuling ran out of the carriage behind Feng Wu's and rushed to Uncle Chiu's side, looking indignant. Not only did young Master and Miss Lu run off, they took all the guards with them. It'll be dark soon. What are we supposed to do in the middle of nowhere? Uncle Chiu was equally flustered, but he managed to keep the look on his face calm and said coolly, Death Valley is full of peril, and even more so after dark. I think the young master meant us harm. Qiuling said resentfully, can they be any more obvious about it? Of course they mean us harm. They're only too glad to be able to get rid of Madam and Miss like this. They're simply evil. Blue veins popped on Uncle Chiu's forehead. What does Miss Wu think? She's so smart. I bet she'll have a plan. Qiuling smacked her forehead. Of course. I'll go ask Miss Wu. However, when Qiuling lifted the thick curtain of the carriage, Feng Wu's beautiful mother raised her index finger to her lips and gestured at Qiuling. Shoo! Seeing Feng Wu sitting there cross-legged with her eyes closed and the abundant spiritual energy circling her, Qiuling saw right away that Feng Wu was in the process of leveling up. This wasn't the right time to disturb her at all. Uncle Qiu was baffled when he saw this. Cultivation? Miss Wu could cultivate now. Because Feng Wu was wearing her concealing jade, Uncle Qiu couldn't tell what level Feng Wu was at. However, the fact that she could cultivate again was enough to make Uncle Qiu wild with joy. Miss Wu has resumed her cultivation. Our Miss Wu is a cultivator again. Rapturous, Uncle Qiu took Qiuling by the arm with wide eyes. Is it true? The excitement also brought tears to Qiuling's eyes and she nodded solemnly. Yes, Miss Wu can cultivate now. In the foreseeable future, she'll be so amazing that all those people in the Imperial capital will never see her the same way again. Good. This is great. Great. Tears of excitement streaked Uncle Qiu's cheeks. I have no regrets even if I die here today. He had been with Feng Wu since she was little. He had been there when her fame reached its peak and when she fell. How could he not be exhilarated when he found out that Feng Wu could cultivate again? However, at that moment, the sonorous and resentful howls of wolves came from the mountains of Death Valley. Aru! Uncle Qiu and Qiuling exchanged looks and both saw fear in each other's eyes. Chapter 155 Run. Chapter 155 Run. Wolves. That's the sound of wolves. Qiuling looked at Feng Wu and Uncle Qiu in turn, and asked Uncle Qiu, what now? Do you think you can kill that wolf? That wolf. Uncle Qiu gave her a bitter smile. That's the king of obsidian wolves, and when it howls it won't just be one wolf. In a few minutes we'll see tens of thousands of obsidian wolves charging at us. Granny Zhao, Qiuling, get inside the carriage. We're leaving. Granny Zhao was driving the carriage behind them, which contained all those chests. She would never outrun those wolves with such a heavy load. Both Granny Zhao and Qiuling were well trained to handle emergency situations like this, and they jumped into Feng Wu's carriage right away. As soon as they were on board, Uncle Qiu's whip flicked through the air and struck the horses on the back. The horses sped up right away. Because of the increase in speed, the ride became bumpier than before. Granny Zhao took pity on the beautiful lady, who was looking at them with eyes as innocent as a fawn's. She gripped the lady's hand hard and comforted her. Madam, don't worry. We'll be all right. However, Granny Zhao's words were of little use because Qiuling lifted the curtain and looked out. It wasn't completely dark yet, and she could clearly make out the obsidian wolves everywhere, each one sturdier than the next. Their fur was glossy and the vicious look on their faces showed how ready they were to kill. They were now rushing down the slopes in the manner of ones who ruled this land. The sound of their paws pounding the ground was like hammers thumping on Qiuling's chest. She blanched and went very stiff. Uncle Qiu realized how serious the situation was as well. He said loudly to Granny Zhao, "You drive. Get everyone out of here." After that, Uncle Qiu tossed the whip to Granny Zhao before jumping down from the carriage and charging at the Wolf King. Granny Zhao and Qiuling burst into tears. The obsidian wolves were everywhere, and there was no way that Uncle Qiu could fight them off. He had just given up his life to save them. However, this wasn't the time for Granny Zhao to get sentimental. She was responsible for Miss Wu's and the ladies' lives now. Smack! Granny Zhao whipped the horses hard. The fact that she could guard the lady for so many years was proof enough that Granny Zhao was no mere old lady. However, no matter how hard Granny Zhao struck them, the two horses remained frozen on the spot. Qiuling cried out, "Shit! The horses are frightened by the wolves and they can't move. We need to get off the carriage now." However, it was too late for that. Because of the terrain, Feng Wu's carriage was right in the middle of the valley, and the obsidian wolves were charging down at them from all directions. Hence, Qiuling realized that they had nowhere to run. What are we gonna do? The wolves will be on us in no time. There won't even be any bones left of us after they're done. Qiuling was terrified, but wouldn't give in to this fate. There's nothing to regret about my death, but what a pity for Miss Wu. She just got her ability back and she's going to die like this. I'll get back at those two even if I turn into a ghost. Chilling realized that those obsidian wolves wouldn't charge at them for no reason. The brother and sister had to have done something to them. As they spoke, the Wolf King had reached their carriage. Uncle Cho turned around and panicked. He hurried back toward the others, but there were simply too many obsidian wolves around them. The wolves had figured out that this middle-aged man was the most capable fighter among these 4 human beings. Chapter 156 Gloating over their plight. Chapter 156 Gloating over their plight. Kill him and they would win the battle. Hence hundreds of obsidian wolves attacked Uncle Cho all at once. Right now, Feng Wu was still absorbed in her cultivation. In her oblivious state, she had no idea what was going on outside. She frowned at that moment. The golden liquid had almost filled her dantian, but she couldn't get it to travel through her energy channels no matter what. Hence, she couldn't push herself through to level 5 of Spiritual Master. Feng Wu was well aware of the fact that cultivation was always closely linked to real combat. She was already considered remarkably talented to be able to rise to level 4 without engaging in any real combat. So what she needed now was to find someone to fight. Feng Wu sighed with resignation. She finished her cultivation. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Choling throw herself at her while crying out. An enormous obsidian wolf then stuck its head into the carriage. Feng Wu frowned at the sight. Without thinking, she pulled Flaming Sword, her old weapon, out of the ring, and jabbed it into the wolf's fierce-looking mouth. Roar! The obsidian wolf flew back out, blood spilling out of its mouth. There. Feng Wu patted Choling on her head. What a gallant girl. She had shielded Feng Wu with her own body when an obsidian wolf charged at her. To say that Feng Wu was moved was an understatement. Miss, you're awake? Sob, there are so many of them. What are we gonna do? Inside the carriage, Choling wasn't the only one panicking. So were Granny Zhao and the beautiful lady. Feng Wu had no time to think. The only thing she said was, "Great timing." Great timing? Choling's mouth fell open. They were going to die and her mistress called it good timing. A little while ago on a mountain peak, a teenage boy and a teenage girl sat on a horse each side by side. The girl was slim and the boy sturdy. They were none other than Feng Lu and Feng Yiran. Seeing the surrounded carriage down in the valley, Feng Lu smirked. If Feng Wu can still escape this somehow, I'll eat all the grass in the valley. Watching the fight down below, the look on Feng Yiran's face was indecipherable. He then turned to Feng Lu. Happy? Feng Lu arched an eyebrow. You bet. Who the hell does Feng Wu think she is? How dare a good-for-nothing like her behave so arrogantly around me? It's time for her to pay. She should have died 5 years ago. The past 5 years were already a bonus that she should never have earned. Feng Yiran smiled a little. You've been living in Feng Wu's shadow since you were little. If you can let your true self out by killing her death is worth all the trouble. Feng Lu gloated and turned her gaze to Uncle Chiu. What a pity. If he hadn't insisted on following Feng Wu to northern border city, he wouldn't have stayed at this level. Uncle Chiu wasn't the only one. There were also Granny Zhao and Choling. All those who stuck with Feng Wu would die miserable deaths. Let's go. As the obsidian wolves closed in on the carriage, Feng Yiran turned his horse around and left first. Feng Lu wanted to see Feng Wu get killed, but since her brother had left, she followed suit. Right after Feng Yiran and Feng Lu disappeared from the mountain, Feng Wu opened her eyes. Holding the sword in her right hand, she dashed out of the carriage. Chapter 157. I've been waiting for this. Chapter 157. I've been waiting for this. The two things occurred only a second apart. That 1 second was enough for Feng Lu and her brother to regret it for the rest of their lives. Charging out of the carriage with flaming sword, the first thing Feng Wu did wasn't to attack the wolves, but to take out a bottle of expellent from the ring. Back in Frozen Forest, Feng Wu had used the expellent to set Fairy Muyao up. If Feng Sun saw what Feng Wu was doing now, he would definitely be suspicious. Too bad for them that they weren't around. With the carriage in the center, Feng Wu drew a circle with a 10-meter radius on the ground with the expellent. All the obsidian wolves inside the circle grew restless at the smell that was a deterrent to them. They retreated immediately, until they were outside the circle. Qiuling and the others watched this with wide eyes. "Miss Wu, are we all right now?" Qiuling was ecstatic. She had thought that they were surely going to die here. As it turned out, a few drops of the dark liquid which her mistress had taken out was enough to draw a safe circle among all the wolves. Before Feng Wu could reply, she heard a scream from a short distance away. It was Uncle Qiu. There was no time to waste. Feng Wu told Qiuling, "Stay in the carriage. I'll be right back." After that, Feng Wu rushed in Uncle Qiu's direction with her flaming sword. First stance of flaming sword. Merciless stars. Despite being a mere level 4 spiritual master, Feng Wu was light-footed and very nimble. As soon as she struck out with merciless stars, the head of the obsidian wolf that had taken Uncle Qiu by his throat was severed from its body. However, these obsidian wolves were as fierce as rumored. Even with its head chopped off, the wolf's fangs still dug deep into the flesh at the back of Uncle Qiu's neck. The sharp teeth glinted coldly in the moonlight. Turning around, Uncle Qiu saw Feng Wu and his pupils contracted. "Miss Wu, run. Don't waste your time saving me. Just leave." Seeing the blood that covered Uncle Qiu's face, Feng Wu saw that he was severely injured and couldn't hold on much longer. She immediately scattered more than half of the repellent in the air. The obsidian wolves hated the repellent more than anything else. At the smell, the ferocious wolves stumbled back. Feng Wu seized the opportunity to grab Uncle Qiu by the arm, as she quickly dragged him into the safe circle. Granny Zhao was Uncle Qiu's wife, and she almost passed out when she saw all the blood on Uncle Qiu. Feng Wu handed Granny Zhao a white bottle and some red pills. "Pour the white one over his wound and feed the red one to him. Quickly." "Yes." Now wasn't the time to pass out. Granny Zhao immediately treated Uncle Qiu's wound as told. Meanwhile, Feng Wu examined the wolves outside the circle with a grim look on her face. This was a little different from last time, because Jun Linyuan had been there back then. He was so formidable that the wolves backed off without any repellent. Although the obsidian wolves were now being kept at bay outside the circle, they kept their intimidating gazes on Feng Wu and the rest. They didn't dare enter, but they wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Hence they stayed where they were. Feng Wu smirked. Did they think her an easy target? Well, she was indeed in need of some real combat, and these wolves would come in handy. Chapter 158 Punching Bags. Chapter 158 Punching Bags. Looking at the wolves, Feng Wu smiled. You guys came at just the right moment. Because she lacked real combat, she was stuck at level 4. She couldn't be any more glad to see so many punching bags. Hence, Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and told Qiuling, "I'm leaving my mother and Uncle Qiu in your hand." Qiuling looked at Feng Wu in confusion. "Miss, what are you?" However, before she could finish her sentence, Feng Wu charged out into the obsidian wolves, holding her flaming sword. That almost made Qiuling shriek. She wasn't the only one who was surprised. The others were just as baffled. They were finally safe, but Feng Wu had just jumped back out herself. What was she thinking? Seeing that Feng Wu had left the safe circle willingly, the obsidian wolves pounced on Feng Wu all at once. First stance of flaming sword. Merciless stars. It was her master who had taught her this sword art of flaming sword. And the sword itself had been forged under her master's instructions by the best alchemists and according to Feng Wu's qualities. The blade created a silver arch in the air as Feng Wu exhibited merciless stars. Whoosh! A wolf was thrown into the air, and when it fell to the ground, its entrails spilled out of a 50 centimeters gash in its abdomen. It was dead before its giant body hit the ground. That successfully shocked the rest of the obsidian wolves. However, they were indeed the warrior wolves they were said to be. The scent of blood incited their wild nature. Aroo! The howl of a wolf rang out in the distance. Instantly, the 10 obsidian wolves closest to Feng Wu pounced on her all at once. "I thought you'd never come." Feng Wu smirked, then shouted, second stance of flaming sword. Fire stars. Crimson flame instantly erupted from the sword. It shot out and encircled the 10 obsidian wolves. Whoosh! 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 The blade flickered as Feng Wu clashed with the wolves. Inside the safe circle, Qiuling and the others were so nervous that they covered their mouths with both hands, too afraid to cry out or even blink. They almost forgot to breathe. They went completely stiff. They feared that if they looked away for 1 second, they would look back only to find that Feng Wu had been devoured by the obsidian wolves. There were so many wolves. However, when the flame faded, they saw that all 10 wolves had been killed without a sound. Blood dripped from the tip of Flaming Sword. The way the obsidian wolves eyed Feng Wu changed a little. These were the wolves that had surrounded Feng Wu in Frozen Forest. They had seen with their own eyes that this girl knew next to nothing about fighting. Why was she so different now? Again, Feng Wu pointed at the wolves with the tip of Flaming Sword. The obsidian wolves now knew fear. Baring their fangs, their mouths widened in gruesome smiles. 20 wolves jumped out this time. Feng Wu smirked. Third stance of Flaming Sword. Shattering stars. The blade glinted. Bodies clashed. Feng Wu fought the 20 wolves patiently. She didn't rush to kill them right away, but tried to make her strikes more precise. She knew perfectly well that she couldn't kill all the wolves here. She was only using them as punching bags to practice her skills. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.